Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei was scorpion instead of dragon and harem? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the xDoug-Dimmadome-x for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Let's start this video. Issei Hyoudou, at least that what his name was many years ago when he was still a child, stood in a mountain pass. He was alone. 17 years old and dressed in the finest cloth. He wore a shield and a gladius and was currently face to face with a man he grew to despise and a bespectacled female he didn't recognize. You've given me quite the trouble, Scorpion. That is not my name. Your other name is lost to the ages. No one will remember it. I will. You took me from my family long ago. You made me fight for you, bleed for you, and you killed off my best friends. They were bugs. Insignificant creatures. You focused too much on them. They had to go. Like you said, they had to go. Just like your head. Issei, or Scorpion, roared before charging at the male. The male smirked and stood there without fear as the woman beside him disappeared and reappeared behind Issei, grasping him from behind and knocking him out with a glowing purple circle. This little man gave you so much trouble that you had to call upon me for help? Believe it or not, this young man was the greatest gladiator of all time, undefeated. He was inventive, smart, he made me lots of money. Sadly, he grew too bold for his own good and raised a rebellion against me. He took down several detachments of the army. Yet they fell nonetheless, did they not? Why go through all this trouble for this boy? Simple. He must pay. Plus, this boy was responsible for the fall of one of our allies. He took down the political allies we needed. He did? I thought you sent the best of the best to protect them? She roared with fury. The woman was a tall woman with glasses on her face. She had tan skin with long brown hair tied into a bun. She had purple eyes. She wore an extremely low-cut dress that had a high slit which exposed a large portion of her large. This man is stronger than any I've seen. He took my entire house with him, and I was lucky to escape alive. You prick. I should kill you where we stand. We needed those allies to assist me. You, calm down. I still have the most important possession. I have the sword you were looking for. Excalibur? Yes, I have it. It was under my nose the entire time. I was lucky to get it before. Look, it doesn't matter. I have it. Good. I won't kill you then. So, what shall we do with this one? I have a plan and you can help me. The man said, grinning evilly at the unconscious form of Issei. Issei woke up with a startle, attempting to jump forward, but he was held back by glowing purple chains. What is this? This is your punishment for defying me, boy. Damn you, Julius. What was all of this for, huh? Money? Power. I am going to become emperor of Rome one day. Issei then spotted the female staring at him from next to Julius, and then looked over towards Julius. What are you doing to me? Simple. The woman spoke. You are going to be entombed and locked under the sea forever. You will not age, you will not need sustenance, but you will be awake. You will most likely go insane. Why something so cruel? Why are you heirs doing this? Issei demanded, trying to escape the chains. Simple, boy. While I don't care why you took down the house of Julius or killed the Roman army, you destroyed the political allies I needed to secure the victory of the devils in the three-way war. You got in my way and I cannot forgive that. Good night. She spoke with a cruel tone and smirk. The Egyptians did wonders with tombs, she said as the lid sealed shut and the roars of anger from the teenager were silenced for good. 2,281 years later. Xerxes. It's Azazel. I know better than to call you, but luckily this is a secure line. Can you meet me in Naples, Italy? I can be there shortly. Why? Surely you wouldn't call me just to chat. I found something you might want to see. I think I found the body of the boy who stopped the original devils from winning the war. What? The gladiator? Yes. I can tell you more when you get here. On my way. If this is what you say. I have to bring others. That's fine. I will wait here for you. Several hours later, several magical bubbles appeared from the underwater lake and out came multiple people. Ah, there you are. I was wondering where you went. This discovery is legendary. We can finally get some more answers. The kid is dead, you know, but the tomb itself, surely it has some answers for us. Very true. Azazel stated. Azazel was a tall man with black hair with golden bangs and a black goatee. He had a mischievous aura about him. Xerxes was a tall man with long crimson hair. He wore a very expensive-looking robe with armored shoulder pauldrons. Next to him was a beautiful woman who looked to be in her late teens. She had black hair tied into twin tails with blue eyes. She wore a dress that looks like it came out of a cartoon with a magic wand. Despite her outfit, she had a serious aura about her at the moment. Another man stood next to the woman. He was a beautiful and attractive young man looking to be in his early 20s. He had light blue eyes and green hair that was slicked back. There was a mysterious aura about him. There was an older-looking gentleman who was bald and had a black goatee. "Surely you know how dangerous it is for us to be here, so make this quick," spoke the bald man. "Geez. Always so serious, Falbium." Azazel joked only to get a glare from the bald devil. All right. Follow me," he spoke as he led the 4 devils through a wall of the cave that was just an illusion to keep humans out. Xerxes commented. "Exactly. One of my subordinates was in a tour here in Italy on vacation. The tour was in this underwater cave, and she felt a magical presence within the cave. She went in after the tour and found something. She immediately contacted myself. Even if it's a magical presence, why warrant it? Simple. She came upon this," Azazel said, coming around a corner, and as soon as the devils turned the corner, they went completely still. Right in front of them was a giant stone sarcophagus. It had several glowing magical seals placed all over, but the biggest thing was what the lid of the sarcophagus had engraved. A giant scorpion. Ajuka and Seraphol were currently assessing the magical seals placed upon the sarcophagus while Azazel, Falbium and Xerxes were watching nearby. "That's an Egyptian-type burial, right?" Xerxes asked. "Yes. That's what it looks like, but why would the Romans use centuries-old burial techniques for kings and queens for this boy? It makes no sense to me," Azazel replied. Azazel and Xerxes were in deep thought for a few minutes until they heard an audible pop. "Lucifer, we have the sarcophagus opening up. And it smells like fresh air inside," Ajuka commented. "Xerxes, you might want to come take a look at this," Seraphol said a little loudly. Azazel and the other 2 devils approached the sarcophagus, and with a loud thud, the lid smacked into the ground and laid flat. Inside was a teen, not even decomposed, as if alive. "Is he alive?" "Not sure. Guess we should find out," Azazel said, with a very surprised tone. It was then the eyes of the boy opened, and with a roar, the boy leaped out and tackled Seraphol and took out a dagger, aiming the dagger down towards her. He was so fast and attacked with surprise that the dagger was an inch away from her when she grabbed his arm and held him back. "Well, guess that answers that," Azazel commented. Azazel placed a magic circle next to the boy's head and knocked him out, gently placing him off of the Devil Queen. Neither of the devils were angry about what had occurred, as the boy was just a human. However, when they heard the gasping wheeze of death occurring, they turned to Issei, who, while unconscious, was gasping for air. "Crap! One of the seals was a curse. That sarcophagus was a goddamn torture instrument," Azazel roared, attempting to use several magical equations to try and fix the problem, but the boy continued to gasp for air. "Here. Let me. I will resurrect him as a devil. Should fix it. Any objections?" Xerxes questioned. No one spoke and Azazel backed off, so Xerxes placed a pawn onto the boy's chest only for it to fail. He kept trying pawn pieces until the 4th one, and just placed all 8 onto the boy. "Strong sacred gear, I'm guessing?" Azazel said, scratching his head. As the devil pieces took effect, the boy breathed normally, returning to normalcy. He was still knocked out nonetheless. "Yes, a strong sacred gear rests in this boy, but something else," Ajuka said, a magic circle over his hand as he waved it over the boy. I can't tell, but this boy has something else that belongs to him, but I don't know what it is." "Maybe a sword?" "I don't know," Ajuka said, "but he has 2 powerful things to his name, meaning he might be worth those 8 pawns." Xerxes nodded. "I'll let my sister know what's going on. You should be aware of his condition. He might be insane. He also might not respond well to being part of a peerage." "Yes, I can see why. I'll take care of it. This boy is responsible for saving the world from destruction. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure he has a good life." Seraphol nodded. "I shall as well." The other 2 devils hummed in response. Azazel chuckled. "If only Michael could be here to see this." "He knows," Seraphol stated. "He's just really busy right now. Something big coming up or something." "And you, Azazel? Are you going to assist this boy?" "Of course. I'm not mean enough, but it will come in time when I can help him," Azazel said with a shrug. "I think it's time I go. Until we meet again, Xerxes." "Likewise," the Devil King responded before all of the devils teleported away in their personal magical circles. Xerxes arrived with Issei in his arms like a bridge, appearing before another red-haired woman. "Rias, we need to talk," Can you get your peerage? No need. They are all here. Just in another room. A few minutes later, 3 people walked through the double doors and came upon a boy who was laid down on one of the couches. Sir Lucifer, spoke the other boy in the room. He had short blonde hair, gray eyes and a mole underneath his left eye. No time for formalities. I will cut to the chase. This here is your new pawn. He took up 8 pieces and I need you to listen closely. This boy was sentenced to life imprisonment within a sarcophagus in an underwater cave in Naples. He was innocently put in there. I want him happy, I want him safe, I want him to have a fantastic life. xDoug said before looking around for questions. Why the request? What makes this boy worth so much? He is the sole reason why the world wasn't destroyed. He was the reason why the 4 original Devil Kings never succeeded in winning the war and plunging the world into chaos. He? How did he do such things? Aquino asked with surprise. He toppled political allies within the Roman Empire that had ties to the devils. With them gone, they couldn't seize access to the secret weapon they were building to kill heaven and the fallen angels. He is responsible for the peace we have now, even if it's not perfect. I see, Rias said with a hum. He's not aware of his actions, is he? No. There is also more, xDoug continued. Unknown to everyone in the room, Issei was awake but his eyes were closed. He was listening. He was a slave for most of his life. I'm sure you know what that means. I do. He won't take kindly to learn that he has a new master. There is also the fact he might be insane from his long incarceration. He was forced to be awake except the times he would naturally sleep. I'm not insane. Issei spoke, though it was from behind Aquino. Issei had a dagger placed up against her as he stared at xDoug and the others, back against the wall. Issei Hyoudou, or the Scorpion, was 6'3" and had long brown hair down to his feet. He had muscles though they were very weak and would need to be regained, though it wouldn't be as hard as it was before by far. He had 2 scorpions tattooed on his chest, both placed on his pecs. There was also a scorpion on the center of his back. Scars littered the boy's body from head to toe, most of the scars on his back. There was also a scar running from 2 inches above his right eye down to an inch below his right eye. He only wore a pair of sandals and a loincloth. Everyone turned to Issei minus Aquino. Kiba drew his sword, but the blade was pressed deeper into the flesh of the woman, who was very still. Drop the sword or the little bitch gets it, Issei hissed, which got Kiba to drop his sword. Issei began to move towards the door, his eyes glaring at everyone. You stay the hell away from me or the slut dies, Issei said as he exited the room, still walking backwards. Sweetie, we are only trying to help, Aquino said sweetly. Shut up. I don't want to hear anything from you or anyone. I'm not going back into that tomb, Issei said, pushing Aquino forward into another room before he dashed out of the building completely, coming upon a new land to him. He looked back at the building and went into a sprint, his sandals clopping against the ground. His eyes began to look all over, spotting new things he's never seen. Sensory overload began to creep up on him, only for him to stop after hearing a voice. So, it seems the devil is running around, no less. How interesting. No sign of you running away from me, and no sign of your master or a magic circle of any sign, so astray is what you must be. Guess it's my lucky day. The man spoke. The man was dressed in a black trench coat and matching fedora. Time to die, he spoke, forming a light spear in his left hand before chucking it at Issei, who dodged backwards, only to charge at the light spear, throwing fallen angel, who revealed his wings. Nice reflexes. But try this on for size. He formed 2 spears and chucked one after the other. Issei dodged the first one, but the second one struck his torso, missing the organs and hitting empty space within his chest cavity, though he would bleed out in about 10 minutes, due to the size of the hole, if he was a human, so he would be unconscious in about 6 minutes nonetheless. Ignoring the pain, Issei tackled the fallen angel and slammed him into the nearby wall before picking him up by the groin before slamming the angel onto his knee, snapping the spine. Issei tossed the fallen angel on the ground and slammed his foot down onto the face of the man, killing him instantly due to the fact the brain was on the floor now for the angel. A few seconds later of heavy breathing and standing around, Issei staggered and collapsed onto the ground, seeing his blood run down his body and through his hands. This is how I die in a faraway land away from my brothers. At least I'm finally free, Issei thought before he went unconscious. Issei found himself waking up to a warmth he has not known for centuries. The sarcophagus was warm, but it was a different warmth. An unnatural warmth. This warmth was natural, and it felt wonderful. As soon as brain clicked on, he quickly sat up and looked towards the warmth, spotting the red-haired female he saw earlier cuddled up to him. He quickly got out of bed and began to look for his dagger, only to remember he dropped it within the city. He began to move towards the door, but a voice behind him stopped him. You heal quickly. Must have an amazing amount of willpower within you. I was trained to ignore pain, and I was always strong, Issei replied, glaring over his shoulder at the female. I'm not going to hurt you. In fact, I healed you from your wound. Typical slave master. Won't let me die as I'm still useful to you. Ria sighed and stood up, before summoning a dagger with her magic circle. Issei's eyes went wide at seeing the magic, but he then focused on the dagger as the woman approached him, handing it to him. She held the sharp part. I won't lie to you, you are basically a slave again in my service, Ria said, backing away as soon as she grabbed the dagger. But I'm not cruel, nor do I consider anyone in my service a slave. We're friends. Issei stared at the dagger in his grasp and looked over at the woman, his long hair covering his left eye. Issei kept his eyes on Rias as he gripped his long hair in his hand, and with the sharp dagger, he removed off most of the hair, leaving only a messy 5 inches of hair left on his head, but it was easier to manage. I'm supposed to believe this? I'm supposed to trust the same people who put me into that tomb? You are no longer within the era you once were. You are in a different country altogether, and a different time. What happened long ago doesn't occur anymore. I am also not the person who put you in there. Even if the devil did that, most of us would not do such things. So what now then? Issei asked, putting a lot of trust in Rias. Her handing him a knife and pretty much sitting on the bed defenseless let Issei see she is not as he thought. Well, I plan on going back to bed and going to school tomorrow. School? Yes, to learn. Oh, those little curtain-covered huts next to the market. Issei commented. Rias giggled and smiled. Not at all. You have a lot of learn. The world has changed greatly. I would like to show it to you. Let you learn everything you can about this world. I can do that, Issei said, tossing the dagger onto the desk near the bed before grabbing one of the blankets from the bed, leaving Rias one. Where are you going? I don't want to sleep next to you or in the same room as you. Don't trust me yet? No, Issei said, climbing out of the window and laying on the flat porch outside with the blanket under him. He used his arms as pillows and shut the window behind him. Rias sighed and smiled. Well, this is a start. About 5 hours later, Issei awoke the warmth of the sun on his back. Letting out a yawn, the half-boy stood up slowly and looked around where he was, panicking for a moment before remembering the night before. It was then the window behind him opened and the red-haired woman was there. Come get some breakfast. Akino made food for everyone. Come eat, but first, go get dressed. Your clothes are picked out for you and placed on the desk. Rias offered, walking off. Issei began to get dressed, though it was difficult, but he ended up following her, and walked down the stairs. As he was walking down the stairs, he smelt a wonderful smell. It was food. Issei was dressed in a pair of beige cargo pants with a white t-shirt with a scorpion in the middle of it. Issei stood in the kitchen/dining room combo and looked at the table where everyone ate. She eats with her slaves. Issei noted in his head, looking around the table. Everyone took a look at him, and went back to eating. Come, Issei. Sit. We won't hurt you, Rias said with a smile. Issei took a seat next to a short white-haired female who glanced at him. He noticed her clamp up slightly, though he expected it from his actions the night prior. The woman he held a knife to sat down in front of him, which got Issei to stiffen for a bit. I'm not going to bite, nor will I get revenge for you having a knife to me. No punishment? No, she said sweetly. I'm Akino, by the way. Rias, the red-haired girl stated. Kiba, the other male said after. Kaneko, the girl next to him said softly. Issei Hyoudou is my real name, though no one called me that. It's a pleasure, he said quietly before eating his food. His eyes widened and his jaw visibly quivered as he tasted the food that the woman in front of him cooked up. He kept on eating, albeit slowly, savoring the food. Everyone noticed his reaction to the food but didn't say anything, letting him eat. After 30 minutes, and 2 more plates of food for Issei, Issei began to walk behind Rias and the others on the way to school, which was only about half a mile away from where they were prior. Issei, you can walk alongside us, you know, Akino said with a smile. Issei began to walk alongside Kiba, who only smiled. So, how are you liking our world so far? Kiba asked Issei. It's different. The air is dirtier. It's not as clean as I remember. The ground is green while I only remember desert and scorching heat or freezing colds. Is it better? Most of it, though the air quality is worse, Issei commented. Kiba nodded and went silent. I think you will like staying with us in this world, Issei, Akino said with a big smile. I have my doubts, Issei stated. Though my master seems to be very kind and treats all of us with respect as if we were equals despite the fact we are not, are we? No one is equal in this world. Kiba stated, looking up at the sky. You'll learn pretty quick that while the human world may not have slavery in most of the countries on this planet, equality is not the case. That doesn't mean life is bad. I suppose not. Issei said softly. At least you're willing to try to stay with us and not run away. Akino said with a grin. Even though we would have let you go. I don't know much of this world and you guys seem to be willing to teach me. I'm not being whipped or being put in chains and I can walk alongside my master and eat the same table and eat the same food. This is tolerable. Issei said quietly. Good. Rias said with a grin. If there is anything you need, we can help you. Issei nodded and he entered the large school building with them, only for everyone split up leaving Rias, Akino and Issei to walk off towards a room. For a while, you won't really be in school. I don't think I want you to meet the other devils just yet. I want you to settle in and get you prepared for this world since you now have a new life to live. So, I will have to get you some tutors. I think it will be Akino and I who will take turns with you, teaching you basic things for school. Gotta bring you up. I know some things. I had a good education, I think. Guess we'll find out. Rias said with a giggle. We'll have to test you, but don't worry. You're a devil. You can learn very quickly. Alright, well, if you can wait here for about 30 minutes, we will begin with testing you and helping you out. Just have to get things prepared. Is that okay? Sure. Issei said, sitting in a chair as the two beautiful ladies left. The day went by very slowly for Issei, though the two girls had stated he was doing very well. He had basic math down pat. Addition and subtraction, though multiplication and division was a bit lacking. This was to be expected, and while it wasn't really good for his age in the modern world, they were teaching him other math things and he learned very quickly, which was great. He would only need maybe a year or two of private tutoring to become more modern. He wasn't stupid. He just came from another time. With the school closed to the main public, Rias, Akino, Kaneko, and several other women were currently in the bathhouse located within the school, though it was only known to the devils of the school. So, I hear you got a new servant. My sister sent me a message saying it was someone that was locked up for many years even though he was innocent? Sona asked. Sona was a woman with black hair in a bob-cut style with violet eyes hidden behind a pair of glasses. Yes. He's here at the school actually. Akino and I spent the day helping him learn math. Interesting. How long would you say he spent in the tomb? Can't say. The clothing suggests during the Greek and Roman times, but he could have also been a slave during a lot of history. Though with what my brother said I think it was before the Great War, but that leaves a lot of time within the human history to go through. I see. How interesting. Is he dangerous? Very. At least he was. He put a knife to Akino, and used her as a hostage but let her go as he ran away. After that, he killed a fallen angel before succumbing to his wounds. You let him near you after that? Yes. I put my trust into him. Bold. Stupid but bold. Sona said with a nod. So, my sister says this boy is to live a happy life. You up to that task? I sure hope so. Rias said with a small smile. A few minutes of silence passed before the doors opened and Issei walked in and climbed into the hot bath. None of the girls screamed, but several girls who were with Sona covered themselves. Issei looked around and noticed the girls staring at him. What's the matter? Were you talking about me? Issei asked. Sona looked over at Rias and Rias sighed and shrugged towards Sona. Akino began to giggle at the situation before turning to Issei. We didn't expect you to come into the bath with us. Akino replied. Why not? I am allowed to bathe, right? Issei asked, genuinely confused. Of course, sweetie, but in the modern world boys and girls bathe separately unless they are in a relationship. Oh. Issei said, standing up before bowing to everyone. It is my deepest apologies. Where I come from, nudity wasn't something we were ashamed of. I will leave, Issei said before backing away. No. Sona stated. Come take a seat. While she is right that it's usually frowned upon, I don't think it will be an issue if you bathe with us. She said. In fact, I should get to know you. If you are a threat to this school, I have to take precautions after all. Issei took a seat and looked over to Rias, tilting his head. He was curious about Sona. This is one of the devils I didn't want you to meet yet. Seems fate wants otherwise. This here is Sona Citri or Sona Shirtorai, sister to one of the devils who rescued you from your tomb. She isn't like myself, and while she can sometimes be considered cruel, she is more of a calculating, cunning, cautious type. I see, and you would be the impulsive, Jump headfirst into the lion's mouth, kind of person? Issei asked. He wasn't making a joke or anything, just curious. Sona chuckled with Akino for a moment before grinning at Rias. He got you down pat, didn't he? Shut up. Rias said with a huff which got the two girls to start laughing. So Issei was it? Tell me, what time period did you come from? What did you do? I was a slave within the Roman Empire. Well, that narrows it down quite a bit. At least 2,000 years. Sona said with a nod. What did you do? I was a slave. I meant what did you do as a slave? I don't want to talk about it. Issei said sharply, alarming the devils, though they calmed down as they saw him uncomfortable with the questioning. The bath remained silent for the remainder of the night except for a few questions and answers during which Issei had his back washed before he washed Akino's back in return. Issei spent the remainder of the night within the bedroom that he was given to by Rias, setting up his sleeping quarters. Issei spent a great deal of time playing with the light switches, understanding electricity. He even shocked himself by sticking a metal fork within the light socket nearby, which got Akino to come by quickly to see if he was alright, only to laugh at him before walking away, leaving the guilty-looking Issei behind. A week has passed since Issei found himself in a new world. He had been going to school regularly and had been tutored consistently by Akino, Rias, Sona or Tsubaki. Tsubaki was the queen and right-hand lady for Sona. Despite Rias's concerns about him meeting Sona or Tsubaki, Issei was alright with them. They were cold and calculating, but it didn't mean they were cruel people. Issei had met Sona's peerage, and there was no sign of abuse within, so Issei didn't have any ill will towards them. He had been struggling to get used to the modern technology like toilets, running water, electricity, and for a few hours, Akino had been forcing him back into a room because he had been freaking out when he was playing with the internet. Akino, of course, had some fun at his expense for such things. So for the week, Issei spent most of his time with Akino despite the fact he held her hostage or the fact that it was Rias who brought him in. Issei felt really close to Akino, feeling a bit happy. She was really nice. Out of everyone in the peerage, he interacted with the youngest member the least. Kaneko wasn't really around Issei except during meals and bathing times, in which Issei would bathe with all of the women. It seemed the women didn't mind a male bathing with them. Kaneko at first had reservations about it, but she seen that it wasn't out of perversion he enjoyed the bathing. He enjoyed it because it was part of the culture he was born into. He never ogled and genuinely respected each woman. Due to the fact that Issei interacted with Kaneko the least, Rias and Akino were now going to try to get Issei and Kaneko to be friends as well and interact with each other more. Kaneko had a devil's job to do and she wasn't all that comfortable with using teleportation techniques to move from place to place, so she was walking between each job. Since Akino had taught Issei how to ride a bike, Rias sent Issei to pick up and deliver Kaneko from each job and to stay with her to watch over her. Of course Kaneko didn't need the protection, but it was a way for them to bond if anything. Rias had really put forth the effort to make Issei a happy man and to get him to settle in within the new world. Thanks for helping me out here, Kaneko said quietly as she rode behind Issei, hugging his torso as he sped through the streets. It's quite alright. It's not what I expected I would be doing with my life. To be fair, I never expected to be thrusted into the world 2,000 years into the future, so everything is new to me. It's scary. You're doing fine. I hear you learn quickly and don't panic too often. Generally, people have mental breakdowns during times like these. I didn't like the internet, I kind of panicked a bit with that, but let's just say my past has given me the tools necessary to manage things. What is your past? What did you do in the past that lets you be this way? Issei's aura shifted into uncomfortably, as he was really uncomfortable with sharing this information. However, he looked over his shoulder into the hazel eyes of the young teenager and sighed, deciding to risk it. I was a gladiator. A gladiator? The Roman warriors? Yes. I was a gladiator who fought to the death in the arena for the pleasure of the crowd. I was taken from my home and I traveled on boats throughout my life until I landed in Rome. I don't know how old I was and I don't even remember my parents. I remember my name, but that's it. I don't know where I was born, as I was a slave for most of my life. I was trained to be a warrior by a cruel man and I became the champion of Rome within a few years. Undefeated. So that's where your numerous scars came from, she said softly. I'm guessing you didn't want to be a gladiator anymore? I lost a lot of friends to the whims of the crowd. It was a cruel sport. Would you fight in games if it wasn't to the death? That's an odd question to ask me, Issei said, looking back at the female suspiciously, but Kaneko quickly looked away. Forget it. We're home anyway, Kaneko said, jumping off the bike and heading into the old schoolhouse where they all resided in at the moment. Issei parked the bike inside before coming into the building, entering the main room. Kaneko was the only person there at the moment. She had occupied the couch to his left, and was opening up a bar of chocolate, though Issei wasn't aware of what chocolate was. Issei took a seat on the couch across from her and was looking at her bar of chocolate with intent. The smell of the treat was wafting into his nose and he began to wonder what it tasted like. He had noticed that the white-haired female had a knack for delicious-smelling food. Rias had mentioned she had a sweet tooth, which meant she liked having sweets often. Kaneko noticed his staring and took a seat next to him, breaking the chocolate bar in half and handing him the uneaten half. Issei looked at Kaneko, who nodded at him, and he took a small nibble on the bar of chocolate, before his eyes widened in surprise. Good, right? Issei merely nodded and began to bite into the bar constantly, wolfing down the chocolate with a huge smile on his face. He was eating so messily he had a chocolate stain all around his and on his, but he didn't care. The food was just tasty. Issei had grabbed another bar of chocolate from the container that contained Kaneko's many sweets, digging into the bar with gusto. With his focus on the delicious chocolate, he didn't even hear the door opening as Rias, Akino and Kiba all walked in together. Upon spotting the pair on the couches, Rias smiled, seeing that the two members had bonded after all. They were even eating sweets together. You had to go and seduce Issei with chocolate, didn't you? Rias said with humor in her tone. She giggled at the end of her comment. Chocolate is good. Kaneko defended. Rias smiled and nodded before taking a seat at her desk that was in the back of the room. She just started into the paperwork on her desk when a magic circle appeared behind Issei and Kaneko. The magic circle was orange in color. Phoenix. Kiba commented, which got the attention of Issei, who looked back behind him. Seeing the magic circle behind him, Issei moved to the couch opposite of the one he was in currently, and began to look at the scene before him. However, he noticed that Kaneko, Akino and Kiba moved to stand behind Issei, so Issei quickly followed their lead and stood with them. A tall man with blonde hair that was in spikes turned around and smiled. And Riser has returned to the human realm. I've come all this way to see you, my beloved Rias. The man spoke. Issei could tell just from the tone, the stance and the way he was dressed that this man was as arrogant as they would come. He had a red suit on that had the top 4 buttons undone, which gave view to the muscular chest of the new devil. It was then a white circle appeared and out came a woman dressed like a maid. You are here too? Rias asked rhetorically. Yes. I am here to make sure nothing goes wrong, the woman said, bowing her head. She turned and spotted a newcomer, before turning to Rias. You have a new servant? Does he know who this man is? No. I just got him this week. My brother should have told you who he was. He's been busy the past week. Graphia stated. I am Graphia, Lucifer's queen. This gentleman is Lord Riser Phoenix, the next head of the House of Phoenix. He is a pure-blooded devil as well. Pure blood? Issei asked, tilting his head. Akino turned to Issei. Yes. There are devils who are full devils. They were never humans or any other race beforehand. Ah, you really have chosen a stupid servant as your next one. Riser commented. He obviously has a lot of learn. With the comment directed towards Issei, Issei's right eye twitched, but he said nothing. This dude reminds me so much of my previous master. Completely arrogant, and talks down to us like we are dirt. Considers us stupid because we never were taught what they were. You will bite your tongue. Rias warned. He comes from a less fortunate past. My, a soft spot for your slaves as usual. Ah well, I didn't come here to bicker, I came here for you, my darling. Riser mentioned. Issei raised a brow but didn't comment, only focusing on the facial expressions of Rias, who was uncomfortable to say the least. She looked ready to snap and choke the man. 5 minutes later, Issei had continued to watch the interactions between the two devils, seeing Riser touch and stroke the thighs and hair of Rias, who sat there uncomfortable, while Riser drank tea and was calm. He seemed to be enjoying himself. That is enough, Riser. Let it go, damn it. Understand this, I have no intention of ever marrying you. I see now arranged and forced marriages just like back then, Issei commented in his head. But my darling, Riser believes that you cannot afford to be so selfish considering your family's circumstances. I will not bring my family to ruin, but this is my life, my body, my choice. I have no intention of denying you to my family's name, but let me be clear one last time. My husband will be my choice, as it should be. Issei commented once more in his head. You should remember that it is imperative for devils to remain pure blood. We're still recovering our numbers after all. Your brother and your father both decided on this arrangement with the future of our race in mind. They made this decision because they are in too great of a rush. For the final time, Riser, I will not marry you. For the final time, Rias, Riser bears the reputation of the House of Phoenix. Besmirching our good name is unacceptable, Riser stated, holding the chin of Rias as he bent down slightly and looked down at her like he was better than her. A face. Issei stated, picking up a chair and with pinpoint accuracy, missed Rias and smacked Riser straight in the head, sending him stumbling back. You don't have her permission to touch her in such a way. Back off. Rias and the others looked surprised at the sudden outburst of the normally quiet teen but said nothing about what he did. Who the hell do you think you are, boy? Rias's protector. Rias's pawn. Rias's friend. You are nothing but a low-born reincarnated devil. Or a better name for you would be trash. Garbage. You can insult me all you want, little man, but you touch her one more time like you just did, and you will regret it. There will be no fighting here. I am sent here by xDoug, so there will be no disruption of peace. When told such an ominous thing by the one known as the strongest queen, even Riser would be fearful. Issei glanced towards the maid-looking woman before Issei backed away and returned to standing beside Akino. So due to this, my master has given me the option of letting you settle this in a different manner if communication would break down. Of course he did, Rias said with a sigh. What is it then? Rias asked, crossing her arms. If my lady would continue to put her own wants and desires over her family, she is to settle this via a rating game with Lord Riser. Rias, what is a rating game exactly? Issei asked, only for Riser to comment. You need to bite your tongue, little boy. Pure bloods are speaking right now and Riser doesn't want to hear garbage speaking. Rias, what is a rating game? Issei asked again, completely ignoring Riser. It is a battle between two peerages. They fight in a different dimension. Akino stated. Issei's eyes went wide as memories of his past began to flood in, only for Kaneko to squeeze his hand. He looked down at her, and she shook her head before mouthing the word wait to him. Issei nodded and turned back to Riser and Rias. Riser has played through numerous rating games and has scored several wins for himself. On the other hand, my inexperienced fiancé here has not even qualified to fight in one. He knows that Rias isn't old enough to officially play in one. So, a disadvantage is it? Issei asked towards Akino. A lot more to worry about than that, Kiba stated. Issei wanted him to explain, but Riser spoke up. Is this really all you have as pieces, Rias? Yes. What of it? Riser laughed, and snapped his. From behind him, 15 women appeared from a magic circle, revealing over 2 times the numbers Rias's had. They had over 3 times the people they did, and that was including the kings. Riser has a complete set. Now I see. Issei said softly, a very quiet growl coming from his. He was really hating this phoenix. He reminded Issei of his own master back in Rome. Issei doesn't know if he's cruel to his servants, but the way he acts. The way he talks. The way he walks. Everything about him pisses Issei off. Rias, since Riser here is so generous, I will give you 10 days to train. I don't need your charity. Rias snapped back. Take it. Issei said softly. What? Rias turned to Issei, hearing him speak. Take the offer. Issei said, his eyes full of fire. We accept the terms. Rias said, turning to Riser. Good. I will see you at the games. Riser said, laughing as he teleported away with his peerage. I will inform xDoug immediately. Rias turned to Issei. Why did you agree to the game, Issei? Simple. Because we're going to completely destroy that man. An hour after they accepted the game, Issei and the others all arrived by magic circle at the base of the mountain range. In a valley near the top of the nearest mountain rested the Gremory Resort. It was where they were going to train. After Issei said that they were going to destroy Riser in the raiding game, Kaneko had spoken up and vouched for Issei. Since Kaneko wasn't a very outspoken person, with her words alone, Rias was convinced that Issei had something up his sleeve and that she did not know Issei at all, which none of them except Kaneko had any clue. Kaneko didn't really know the boy, but she knows of his past, albeit vaguely. She knows he was a gladiator, but what exactly happened way back then remains a mystery. Rias had given Issei complete and utter command of her magical powers. He had promised her victory, and said that he needs to retrain and regain his former strength. He lost a lot of his speed, durability, flexibility, and basically just lost a lot of his body while imprisoned within the stone sarcophagus. While he didn't necessarily lose his muscles, they slightly deteriorated. The magic circle which would prevent decomposition wasn't perfect. He aged very slowly and gained perhaps 1 maybe 2 years while inside the tomb. With Issei's command, they were taken to the base of the mountain range as Issei decided to make the trek up the mountain itself with heavy gear on, similar to what he would have done as a gladiator, albeit the gear would be much heavier thanks to now being a devil. The others had all decided to at least go with him, despite his reservations towards it. He had explained that he must do the training by himself because he knows what is needed to return him to his former glory. After about 3 hours, Issei arrived at the top of the mountain, dead last against the others, but his gear was equivalent to what Kaneko had, which was massive amounts of weight. Why is the tiny female just as strong as myself, if not stronger? She is a rook, Ria said, but Akino giggled. I think he needs a complete explanation. Very well. The Devil Society, since the Great War, has adopted a system that allows us to make new devils. It's known as the Evil Peace System. We took the human game of chess and implemented this with our reincarnation. We have the king, the queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, 2 knights and 8 pawns. The king is the leader, which is me. The queen is the right-hand man or woman and has a combination of the strengths of the rook, the knights and the bishop. The rook has superior defense and strength, the knight has superior speed, and the bishop has superior magical power. The pawn is a piece that allows them to gain the abilities of any of the other pieces, minus the king. I see. So Kaneko is a rook, so she has strength and defense. Kiba is the knight, and we don't have any bishops yet? Correct. Akino is the queen, but you would have known that, I believe. Interesting. This world is truly new and interesting, Issei commented. Rias, I need access to several training items. I need access to specific swords, wooden ones please, lots of heavy weights, and strong wooden dummies. Alright. Let's head inside and get a full list so I get it done. Issei nodded and followed Rias while the others began to unpack and set up their camp within the resort. After an hour, Issei had access to everything and began to take them with him, all inside a large backpack. He told Rias that for the next 10 days, he would be alone unless he needed something in which he would teleport to her through a magic circle. Akino had given him some lessons in the magic, so he would be alright. Rias questioned him on why he was staying away, and he said that it was part of the training. He promised her that he would win, and Rias had no choice but to believe in him. With that all settled, Issei set off in a magic circle and teleported away, heading to the largest mountain in the world. After setting up his camp and former magical barriers which would keep any humans away, he began his training regime. The backpack had magic properties which made the things inside weightless as he grabbed to weights, equal to the backpack he had the first time heading up to the Gremory Resort. He began to walk up and down the mountain of Everest, climbing up 2,000 feet and down it, repeating itself as he increased the weights. Due to the height, the air quality was very thin. Humans die often up here and very few ever get to the tip top, so this was great training for Issei. 9.5 days were up and Issei decided to end his training as the next day would be the raiding game. Through the training, he spent 9 days training at Mount Everest, with half a day spent with Akino, learning about sacred gears and the like. He had went to her the second day early in the morning before returning to empty Everest. He had achieved his sacred gear and trained with it, using it with the sword during the training exercises. He had spent every other day weight training while the days in between were spent entirely on weapon exercises which included using his fists in what would be called boxing. The training on his body was weights placed upon his body, walking through the thick snow, lifting weights on a pullet he designed on a rock cropping, chopping rocks apart with a steel sword created by Kiba and many other things. He also had a jump rope, which he learned quickly how to use, which he used with precision. He ran up the mountain, going up non-trails with weights on him. He trained everything on his body. With everything completed, he sent a message to Rias that he was ready for the raiding game but would not be there to spend the rest of the day with them. He was going to spend it the way he did back then when his master wasn't a cruel piece of a shit. Hot springs. He had also sent a message to her to get the last item needed, a cape or cloak that was designed with specifics in mind. She was risking everything with Issei, but she believed in him. The raiding game came quickly, with a magic circle next to the bed that Issei was currently laying on. It's time for the scorpion to return to the arena. It's time to win, Issei thought before walking into the magic circle. Upon arrival, he heard several gasps for the other members of Rias's peerage, including Rias herself. Issei had changed. His body was thicker and rippling with muscles. He didn't look like bodybuilders, but you could tell that while his muscles were not very large, they were packed with power. He had light brown hair that was spiky and messy at the same time. He had gotten a haircut. He had chocolate brown eyes that were filled with excitement. Issei, I'm back to my former glory. Once this game is over, I think I shall tell you everything about myself, Issei said, rolling his shoulders. This is Graphia, servant of Serzex Lucifer. I shall be the arbiter for this match. You have 5 minutes before the match begins. Prepare. Well, that is it then. 5 minutes, Rias said, standing up and showing a map of the school grounds. We are fighting a dimension that is created just for these games. This dimension is an exact replica of our school and the grounds. I see, Issei said, looking over the map. Rias, you must send me at them head on. No funny business with me. No tricks. No stealth. Issei, trust me. You should also get a camera to watch everything I do, some sort of magic if you can. Issei. I'm putting my life in your hands, and you will not be let down. I trained and returned to my former glory. I just need a sword from Kiba, this time a bit stronger in terms of durability. Any special elements? Kiba asked. No. I want it super durable. Done. Kiba said, handing a sword he just created to Issei, who placed it in his belt loop. He was not wearing anything but his loincloth, which was held tight with a belt. Alright, everyone set out the illusions and traps around this base. We are going to let Issei to do what he needs to do. Kaneko, are you sure that he can do this? You vouched for him before. If anyone can do what he says, he can. Once you see him in action, you will understand. I see. Ria said softly, and now they waited. Let the game begin. Sounded Graphia. 5 minutes later. That's it, everyone. Issei, head towards the gym. It is the center of the place, and it is a key point. Got it. Kaneko, follow Issei and keep him safe. Roger. Everyone, this is a match to determine our future. If we lose today, not only I will be in his service, but so will you. You will show no mercy, as you will not be shown any. Crush him. 2 minutes later, Issei began walking into the gym from the back, coming in from the stage. Kaneko followed him. Stay away from me, Kaneko. I mean it. Do not interfere. I am a solo warrior. I will try. Smells like gremmery trash in here. Come out wherever you are. Spoke a different voice, coming from inside the gym. Issei turned the corner and walked down the stairs. Oh my, spoke the voice. It was a girl dressed in a blue Chinese dress. She had black hair tied in twin tails with 2 scrunchies holding them. The girl was struck with infatuation at the appearance of the body Issei had. You better prepare yourselves. They sent only you? Spoke another girl. This girl had light blue hair dressed in 4 ponytails, with 2 of them pointed up. She had light brown eyes similar to Issei. She wielded a wooden staff with 2 bulbs on the end. There were 2 other girls, twins in fact. They had light green hair and carried duffel bags on their back. I'm all they needed, Issei said. On his back, a red cape was forming, clipped onto his neck by a ring that was placed snugly on his neck. The cape flowed gently in the wind and barely touched his ankles. On the back of the cape was a large black scorpion, ready to sting. How pathetic. The girl stated, charging at Issei full speed. Mistake. Allow me to show you why I have these tattoos, Issei stated, putting out his left arm. On his arm, a bright red flash appeared and a shield formed. It was in the shape of the Roman scutum, which was a rectangular, semi-cylindrical shield. It was used in the Roman army. It was perfect for deflecting attacks due to the shape. On the top of the shield was something not used in the Roman army, but was specially made for him, which was identical to the shield he used in the arenas in the past. It was a large triangular point, that was 4 inches thick at the base that ended in a sharp point. It was 4 inches long, where only 3 inches was needed to penetrate the body into vital organs. The girl aimed down with her staff to whack Issei in the head, but Issei just pushed quickly with his shield, slamming into her, which knocked her to the ground hard. Issei was fast and kicked her staff away, breaking it in 2 before he swung his shield down hard with the sharp point going directly into her heart, sending her away. One of Riser's pawns retired. How interesting. Not to the death. Here I was prepared to die, but I can understand a bit more now. They call me the Scorpion, Issei said, looking at the other 3 who had wide eyes. Issei had beaten her in 2 seconds. Come and get some. Back in the ORC club room, which was home base for Rias and Aquino had wide eyes as they stared at the screen. Issei, wow, Aquino said before smiling. That was kinda hot. A sacred gear perfect for him, wow. That is great, Rias said, smiling. Let's see what else he can do. You are a problem. I can't let you continue forward. Xiaolan spoke, rushing at Issei while Ile and El charged up their chainsaws before diving at him. Xiaolan aimed a powerful hammer kick down upon Issei, but he put the shield up and her kick deflected on the shield, which actually sent her to his right, which he opened his shield up and thrusted with the gladius sword he wielded. The sword penetrated through her back and came out through the middle of her chest. She instantly was defeated, and once the sword was pulled back, she disappeared. One of Riser's rooks retired. Ile and Nell roared in fury and attacked at the same time, their chainsaws striking at Issei. He blocked with his shield and sword, the chain on his sword stopping completely as it was immovable. The chainsaw kept glancing off and she kept striking, hitting nothing but the very angled shield. Issei grunted and pushed with his shield, which sent Al back before he brought the shield down on the chainsaw, snapping it in two using the sharp point to cleave it in two. With one chainsaw out of commission, Issei turned and crouched down onto the ground just in time as Al came in with her chainsaw, and using her momentum, he sent her flying into the air and over him as he forced her to vault over him. With her out of the way, Issei used his shield to uppercut Nell with the middle, sending her onto her back before he brought his sword down and chopped right into her belly, almost cutting her in two. She disappeared immediately, and just as Al charged at Issei, he sent his shield crashing into her gut, the point embedded in her stomach. She coughed up blood, but a single swing of the gladius into her, which he aimed to only hit her jugular, sent her with her sister. Two of Riser's pawns retired. Rias and Aquino watched as Issei finished off the four opponents of his with ease before exiting through the gym with Kaneko in tow. He is a monster, Rias said with surprise, though it wasn't a term of hatred. It was just what he was. He's a beast. I like him even more now. Back in the principal's office, Riser had gotten word from Mira earlier that they were fighting one guy, but they all were retired. He was enraged. Get that boy. I want his head. Destroy him. Everyone attack him now. We will not let this ringer of Rias to stop us. Kaneko walked to the right of Issei, right next to him. Watching you fight is something else. You're really good. I was trained to kill. To fight to the death and give no quarter. No mercy. Mercy was given very rarely to gladiators. Death was always to be expected. I was trained since I was a small child, only for when I turned 14 to be sent into the arena. I am glad to see you survived. Not without loss, Issei said with a sigh, only to raise his shield suddenly above the both of them, shielding Kaneko and himself as a massive explosion occurred right on the shield. Well, that should do it. Spoke an arrogant voice, only for a sword to be thrown at her, piercing her right in the middle of her chest, into her heart. Out of the smoke leapt Issei, who grabbed the sword from the woman who was falling down to the ground, and removed it from her cavity, as she was disappearing. Issei landed on the ground with a thud, only for his eyes to widen as Kaneko was focusing on him. There was a person getting ready to cleave her in two with a massive broadsword, while two others shot out red bolts of magic. Issei quickly flung his shield, the sharp edge sent right into the belly of the sword wielder, only for the bolts of magic to hit the shield and glance off, striking right into the chest of the lady impaled by his shield, sending her to the medical bay. Riser's queen and one of Riser's knights retired. Move! Issei roared, rolling underneath another sword, as he grabbed his shield and blocked another volley of magic from three French maids. Kaneko headed his warning and leapt backwards, only to be followed by a taller woman who wore a mask on half of her face. Issei was then attacked by three people who came in quickly. The sword wielder was dressed in armor plates, and two beast twins came in as well. He quickly deflected a punch from an eye with his sword, striking her across the back with a slash which wasn't deep at all. She was sent to her knees after spinning around. He turned his body and used his shield to block the sword before swinging his gladius behind him, cutting off the arm of Lee, which also sent the sword downwards into the belly of An, sending her to the medical bay immediately. He spun his body once more, blocking three bolts of magic from the French maids, and thrusted his sword deep into the unprotected belly of the sword wielder, Carloman. With Carloman defeated, Issei once again blocked magical bolts with his shield, sending them flying off into the sky, while his sword came down and cleaved into the belly of Lee, sending her to go with her sister. Two of Riser's pawns defeated. One of Riser's knights defeated. If you want something done, you do it your ing self. Riser roared from the office, flying out of the room after blasting through the wall. Four people remained attacking Issei, with now 4 magical bolts being fired at him. Issei charged at Maihi, who wore a kimono. Spotting Riser launching a fireball, Issei spun around Maihi and sliced her hamstrings, sending to her knees before Issei bashed her with the shield, sending her onto her stomach before Issei rushed forward, slamming his shield right into the French maid with tan skin, Sharia. She was slammed right up against the wall, and Issei just thrusted his sword directly into her, defeating her instantly. It was then a scream was heard and the kimono-wearing female disappeared as well due to Riser's fireball striking her directly. Issei forced her into his spot with his attack. With the sword buried in her, Issei just swung it, removing the cheek of the woman before slamming the sword into the shoulder blade of Burent, who had brown hair, cleaving a good 5 inches into her body. His shield behind him blocked a bolt of magic from Marion before he turned on a dime, and just slashed into Marion's, defeating her as well. 3 of Riser's pawns and 1 of Riser's bishops, defeated. I will kill you, boy! Riser roared, as he prepared to flying tackle Issei, only for Issei to crouch with his shield and vault the poor bastard into the sky and send him flying through a few trees thanks to Riser's momentum. Rias, Aquino and Kiba all appeared suddenly next to Issei as they saw Kaneko fighting with Isabella, the last rook. It's all you, Rias. Handle the phoenix, Issei said, rushing over towards Kaneko, who backed away from Isabella, only for Isabella's hamstrings to be sliced off, sending her to her knees before she was impaled on his shield, which slammed her onto her front, sending her off. 1 of Riser's rooks defeated. With every member of the peerage defeated, Issei finally collapsed onto the wall of the gym, watching as Rias and her peerage fought Riser, absolutely demolishing him every time. He couldn't even move before a sword, a tree or a magic spell struck him and beat him. Issei was breathing a bit heavily, but was uninjured except for a stray magic bolt that struck his thigh, though in the midst of battle, he didn't even feel it. Issei saw a shadow over him, and he quickly grabbed his sword, only for the person to put their hands up. Hey, wait, I'm not a fighter. I just watch. Issei growled at seeing her hair, and she just sat down next to him. I'm not a fighter. I have no interest in this, just like to watch. She said. You're his sister, aren't you? Issei guessed. Yes. I am Revel Phoenix. You trained hard since we challenged you. Indeed, and it paid off. Obviously you guys are weak and unskilled. You seem to have been carried based on the power of the Phoenix alone. You're all pathetic. Hey! We were undefeated except for a few times where we lost on purpose. We aren't pathetic. You're just a monster, Revel said, her face getting red in anger at his words. She looked cute when she was angry. Issei smiled a bit at the cute girl and nodded. Fair enough, Issei replied, continuing to watch Riser getting trampled. Riser needed to lose anyway. He needed a reality check. He had gotten too confident in his own power, and needed to be brought down a few pegs. For his sister, you are quite mean to your own brother. I can see you are a smart girl. Of course I am smart. We Phoenixes pride ourselves in being the best. Well, you aren't the best obviously, or you would have won, Issei said with a grin. Why you? Revel said, puffing her cheeks out only for Issei to gently pat her head and smile. You devils aren't all bad. I'm glad it was only a one-time thing, Issei commented, which only confused the poor girl, who was also pretty confused at why she was being petted. What do you mean? It's nothing. Looks like it's over, Issei said. Riser retired. Rias wins. Graphia spoke, magic circles picking everyone up and teleporting them away. Issei was suddenly hugged tightly by Rias, who was tearing up in happiness. We did it, you did it! You saved me from that man. I told you I would win. You put a lot of faith and trust into me, and I will never forget it, Issei said, gently petting her hair as she continued to dote on him with love and care. Issei and the rest of Rias's peerage teleported to the ORC club room as soon as Rias was done thanking Issei from the bottom of her heart. Upon arrival, Issei took a seat on one of the couches where Kaneko joined him and Kiba and Aquino took the other side. Rias sat on her desk and looked at Issei. So you have some things you want to explain? Rias asked. Yeah. And sure you have lots of questions, so I'll answer as best as I can. I'd like to hear as well, spoke another voice as Serzex appeared from a magic circle with Serafal next to them. Yes, if you don't mind, Serafal said, a serious face and tone on her. Very well, ask away, Issei said, leaning back on the couch. What are you? What were you? Rias asked. Well, I was born in Japan, I think, but I was taken aboard multiple slave ships from Japan to I'm not sure where. I can't tell you exactly what places, but I was on a boat or a caravan for a year or two before I was in Rome. I was about 8 years old when I was taken to Rome, where I was traded to my old master in Bari, Italy. From there, I was trained to be a gladiator from such a young age. My master had political allies which allowed me to participate at such a young age, though I wouldn't compete in a game until I was 14. From there, I was defeated my first game as the final sword struck me across the belly, Issei said, pointing to the large scar right along the belly button. I was alive but barely. It was a miracle I survived, but I did. From there I remained undefeated as I returned to training and trained even. Was pushed even. I've killed hundreds of men in the arena, men twice my age. So to put it simply, I was a gladiator in the arena. I'm sorry you lived that way, Rias said softly. It's fine. It made us win that game, Issei said, brushing her response off. The sacred gear you have. What is it? Aquino asked. I'm not sure. It's a dragon scale looking one, probably scales of Grendel, Serzex commented. Serafal hummed in response. What did you do to train? Where did you go and train? Kiba asked. You got ripped fast. Intense body training using immense weights up an empty Everest. I went up towards the peak. With the lower quality and how dangerous it is, my body got strong fast. Surzex nodded. Impressive. What was life like for you outside of the arena? Kaneko asked. I had a master, just like Rias, who I fought and bled for in his name. However, my master was a cruel man. We would be whipped for anything he deemed improper, talking out of turn, collapsing during training anything. He could be nice and kind, as he did give his slaves proper sleeping arrangements with beds and such. Sure, we would have to share the room, but we had beds and such while other houses had their slaves sleeping on the ground. He would also buy us for the gladiators to use and abuse as they pleased, though I never took one to bed. Since I was the man's best warrior, I was held to a higher standard, meaning that my whippings were more brutal, my training but the prizes were much greater for me. I was given my own private room, a better more comfier bed. I would also sometimes get to dine with the master himself and his wife. Sounds like a really hard life, a bad life. Kiba said softly. I've lost many friends in the arena and some by my own hand. We were forced to take the life of anyone in the arena, including friends' family. If we didn't, both of us would die and it wouldn't be pretty. Sometimes those who disobeyed were fed to the lions or forced to be eaten alive by insects, Issei said, looking out towards the window. I'm sorry for bringing up the memories. Kiba replied, but Issei shook his head. It's fine. I'm fine. Issei replied. How did you end up here? Well, it started on one of the days that I held a rebellion. I had gotten all of the gladiators to my side and we killed everyone we could. My master escaped, but it wasn't a problem. We escaped. For a few months, we were free to do what damage we could. We rescued several other houses of gladiators and formed a decently sized army of highly trained gladiators. We fought the Roman Empire at several locations, defeating them in all of our engagements until the end. We were betrayed. One of the gladiators was allied to my master, and revealed our final plan where we could be in a prime location for an ambush. We fought to the death there and I killed the traitor, but it was for naught. I escaped by myself through a small narrow canyon for a few days until I was found and surrounded. My master had made a deal with a devil named Kateria and I was imprisoned within stone. Apparently I had toppled a group of political allies to her. You were the reason why the devils didn't win the three-way war and destroyed the world. Surzex said. Your sacrifice was never forgotten. I see. Well, I guess I am happy to have assisted. Issei said softly. I don't know if it matters to you, but she lives. Kateria. Surzex mentioned. This piqued Issei's interest, who turned to Surzex. Where is she? Issei said with venom. She's an enemy, so she's in hiding, but if she's ever captured, you may do with her as you please. That sounds really nice. Issei said with a smile. So, before I get into the biggest reason why I arrived, I will leave for a bit and let you guys talk about the raiding game, Surzex said, leaving the room with Serafal into another part of the building. Rias smiled softly and turned to Issei. Thank you again, Issei. You saved me and everyone else from a horrible fate. We could have never pulled that off without you. It's not a problem. I was glad to put that boy in his place. He reminded me so much of my master with his arrogance and how he treated you. I'm sure he isn't very nice to his servants either. That's not entirely true. Riser was a decent master, but he didn't respect them as much as my family does their own. Even Sona respects her peerage more, but Riser kept them happy. Nonetheless, I was happy to do so. Kiba turned to Issei and smiled. Your sword skills are impressive, and you have such a knack for using your shield. It was very good to watch you annihilate the entire team. Thanks. I was trained hard and I even trained myself back then. They called me the Scorpion. Why were you given that name? Aquino asked. We had an infestation at one point of scorpions within the house, though they were harmless. While we got pretty much all of them out, I had decided to keep 2 as a pet, and my master at first was accepting. It actually began to become a good fighting name for myself in the arena. So my master, after my first 3 wins, got me a shield that was designed for me in mind. He also got a cloak made for me. Then came the tattoos. Well, that's how the name got started, and it just stuck. The point on the shield is like the stinger on the scorpion, or that's how it's portrayed. Aquino nodded and Kiba smiled. Can you fight with that sword without the shield? Of course. It's good to have multiple skills in combat. I am proficient with sword and shield, sword and dual swords. Could you spar with me sometime then? We could learn from each other. Of course. I would like that. Issei nodded. It was then Surzex and Serafal came in and smiled. Are you guys done? I think so. Issei said. Good. Then I will reveal my true intentions of coming. Issei, due to your actions within the past and the fact you have suffered because of one of the devils, we've all decided that we would make sure that your life as a devil would be amazing. As such, I am here to offer you kingship. You will no longer be a pawn of Rias and be able to have your own peerage. Really? That sounds amazing. Thank you so much. Your thanks are not needed for it, us who have to thank you. Without your actions, Earth would be under the iron fist of devils who would ruin the world. Those political allies had knowledge of an ancient weapon created by God that could have been used by the devils against their enemies. The weapon was lost through the ages, but the Romans had found it. With those allies gone, the weapon is still lost to the ages. I see. xDoug knelt down and pulled the 8 pawn pieces out of Issei before applying a brand new king piece to Issei, who groaned and felt a different warmth from the pawn pieces. You are now a king and liable to have a house within the underworld, including land. This is only the beginning of the things that are being given to you. I don't know what to say. What about Rias and the others? That's up to yourselves to decide on. xDoug said. As for your present from myself, I haven't really found one to give you. Seraphol said, smiling weakly. xDoug is handling all the basic needs, so it's hard to find something. I'm sure you will find something, but it's really not needed. Issei said softly. But I want to. She said, a bit childish-like. You're a hero and a hero deserves a lot. Then how about you work on getting a hero recognized? Rias offered. I could do that. I will make a TV show about him and I will get a statue too. I will do this. She said a bit excitedly before teleporting away. Issei ended up sweat dropping along with everyone else at how silly she was. And she's the queen of the underworld? Issei asked, smirking with a raised eyebrow. Yup. Kiba said, chuckling before Issei turned to xDoug. What now? Well, I will take my leave and let you guys settle things. Here are the rest of your pieces. xDoug said, placing all 15 pieces onto the desk near Issei. Issei used some magic and placed them into his own magical bag that was just like storage placed in a magical realm. Issei turned to the others and weakly smiled. So what now? Issei asked, wondering how they would take him leaving them. I believe it was the right thing for you to do, so I'm not upset. You saved me from my arranged marriage, so I owe you everything. How about I join you as a queen or bishop? You could use some assistance with being a king. Paperwork and other political things. That would be very helpful. Issei said, bowing his head. It's so confusing. I will follow you as well. Aquino said, smiling. You need all the help you can get. Plus it will be interesting to be serving a new master. Aquino said with a grin. I shall follow as well. Kaneko said. I as well. Kiba said. No reason to break up the team. You guys thanks. Issei said softly before getting up and walking over to Rias and Aquino. I'm not sure what role you guys should be. Aquino has always been a queen, but Rias was the king beforehand. Give me the bishop. Rias said. It will amplify the power of destruction extremely well, which would make me a huge asset. No reason to make Aquino anything other than a queen. Rias smiled. Issei nodded, and through some complicated magical procedures, Rias's king piece was removed from her body and Issei replaced it with a bishop piece, which she accepted with a smile of pleasure from the warmth. Issei moved down the line and everyone let out s or groans of pleasure from the warmth, including Kiba. Well, guess I am the king now. Issei said, scratching his head. This is weird. You'll be fine, master. Aquino said with a teasing wink. Issei blushed and looked away. Within a church in the town over, a pair of cloaked women were preparing to bathe in the small bathhouse. We're almost there. Are you sure about this, Irina? Asked a woman with blue hair with a green fringe. She had dark yellow eyes as well. Of course, Zinovia. I grew up here after all, said the Irina. She had chestnut brown hair tied into twin tails. Issei found himself in a very strange situation, not one he's ever experienced before. He found himself being snuggled by 2 females who were either or pretty much. Rias and Aquino were snuggled up to his body as he ended up turning onto his back sometime during the night, and sometime in the night the 2 of them had occupied an arm and shoulder of his for their own head, sleeping with one of their hands on his chest. Rias was completely, and Aquino was wearing a very thin and see-through negligee. It was purple in color, and it showed she wasn't wearing either bra nor panty to bed. Well, this is something, Issei said, scrunching his eyebrows at the situation he found himself in. They never once decided to snuggle in bed with him, yet here they are now holding on to him. Did he like it? He wasn't entirely sure, but he was sure he didn't hate it. He was more just confused. They do look very sexy and beautiful. I can see why Riser would want to marry Rias. It was then Rias woke up and smiled at Issei. Good morning, master. Rias said, giving him a wink before he sighed. Please, I said this last night. I don't want to be called master. It's just weird. Not even your submissive? Aquino asked from his left, and Issei tilted his head. I don't understand what you mean. Issei replied, only for Aquino to giggle at him. It's nothing, Issei. Well, good morning nonetheless, she said, sitting up and undressed from her negligee before dressing into a school uniform. Yes, good morning, Issei said, sitting up and following the lead of the two females. Want to explain why I go to bed alone but wake up being cuddled? I don't like sleeping alone personally. I usually sleep with Aquino, but I decided to see how it would feel sleeping next to my Issei, Rias said, smiling. It was very nice. I hope you aren't angry. I don't think I sound angry. I'm just confused and curious. I have a very long fuse. It would be hard to make me angry, I think. As for me, I just wanted to sleep next to you. Spur of the moment decision, Aquino commented. I see. Well, you may do what you wish. It doesn't bother me, Issei said, getting dressed in the men's school uniform. He was now going to spend at least one class among the others in the school, though he was continually getting a private education. For breakfast, Issei was asked to show them what he would eat for breakfast, so he ended up getting 2 loaves of French-style bread, cutting it up into pieces before pouring wine into several bowls for dipping. This is what you ate for breakfast? Kiba asked, completely surprised. Yes. This was a normal breakfast for the lower class in Rome, though gladiators ate different things. It's worse, Issei said with a chuckle before grabbing a bottle of honey. We can use the honey as well, but I quite enjoy bread and wine. Everyone dipped their bread into the wine to try it out, but only Aquino seemed to like it. The others used honey, especially Kaneko, who had the sweet tooth. So, gladiators were treated worse than the low class. Our diets were actually heavily into plants like legumes, beans, barley and other plants, and this was what we had to eat mainly, though for breakfast we would also get to have oats, but they were plain, but it was food. Wouldn't that have a very low calcium count? Kiba asked. I'm not sure. We drank things as well. I once saw what they made in the kitchens, and it's boiled charred wood that was mashed and cut up before being placed with water. It was nasty, but it was healthy, I guess. Ah. That's how you got your calcium, Kiba commented. Shit, that sounds horrible. Such was life for the gladiator. Did you ever get any meat? Aquino asked. It was rare that we got meat, but it was usually after a win that the gladiator who won would get meat. Or if the master felt generous, or if there was meat going bad. Ah. Aquino said quietly. What purpose did women have in Roman society? Rias asked curiously. You were treated like property. You had no rights back then. If you were a slave, you had an abundance of roles. You could be commanded to lay with a gladiator, lay with your master, help your master get hard for his wife. You would be commanded to fetch wine, water or anything they required. If you were lucky and were of marrying stock, you had quite more rights, though you could still be treated as a slave by your husband. You were under the thumb of the male in your life. There were exceptions, of course. If you were a wealthy woman, you had a lot more influence in society, but you had no power. Period. You could not vote. You could not be involved in politics directly. Most wives would spin wool or yarn and do household duties like cook and clean. Things have really changed, Rias commented. So they have, Issei said. Though some things remain the same. You still have gladiator contests, though it's peerage versus peerage. It may not be to the death, but you still fight for another person. True, but it's for a good reason. We have these fights to rebuild our strengths from the Great War. It's also a good way for a low-class devil to rise in the ranks and become high-class. I see. That is, different gladiators were gladiators. Period. Issei said, and the rest of the breakfast went in silence. It was now the class that Issei would spend in, which was art. He had picked a class he thought he might like. He was currently waiting outside the classroom, waiting for the teacher to call him in. Calm down, everyone. We have a new student today. He was born in Japan but actually was taken away by some poachers for some slave camps in a very remote part of Africa. So please understand he isn't very well versed in education, so he's getting a private one. Luckily, he gets to join us in this art class. Please come in, Issei. Issei walked in and everyone was expected a dirty, very malnourished person, but what they got was a gorgeous Japanese Adonis. Hello? My name is Issei Hyoudou, and it is my pleasure to meet all of you here, Issei said, bowing his head. Please take care of me, he said before taking a seat at the only remaining seat of the class, right in between two females. Hi. I'm Kates. spoke a female with pink hair cut short. I'm Murayama, spoke the girl on his right, who had brown hair. Nice to meet you, Issei said with a smile. How did you get out of slavery? Murayama asked. I was rescued by Riasa's older brother, Issei replied. That's amazing, Keitase exclaimed. I guess so, Issei said with a shrug. Where do you live right now if you are attending this school? Keitase asked with curiosity. I live on the school grounds in the Occult Research Club. That's so cool. So you get to hang out with Akino and Rias, right? Keitase exclaimed. Yes, Kiba and Kaneko as well, Issei said. Murayama and Keitase smiled. That's pretty awesome. Are you doing alright out here? Murayama asked. Yes, I'm doing well. I'm a faster learning apparently, so I'm catching up in education in the private tutoring. That's wonderful, Keitase said. If there is anything we can do to help, we would love to. Murayama nodded. I will keep that in mind. You two are very lovely ladies. I'm glad to have met you. I'm sure the boy you are with must be happy. We're both still single, Keitase commented. Oh, that's a pity. Two lovely young ladies like yourselves deserve a good man. Such a pity, he said with a smile as he began to draw on the paper under the instructions of the art teacher. Both of the females blushed heavily at his words. He was a natural ladies' man and he wasn't even aware of it, they noted in their heads. Class went wonderfully for the trio, all three talking about his life as a slave, life within the school, and Issei would answer truthfully, though it was a perverted truth as he couldn't reveal his life as a gladiator just yet. If you want to find us after school, Issei, we are part of the Kendo Club. We would love for you to join us sometime. What is Kendo? Issei asked, tilting his head curiously. It's a martial art that focuses on swordsmanship. It was created here in Japan. Really? You two know your way around swords? I'm quite familiar with swords myself, Issei said with a big smile. Really? Could you perhaps come by and show us what you got? Both of us are 2 dan, which is equivalent to 2 black belts. How interesting. Maybe you'll come by today and learn from you guys. I will even bring my own sword. It has to be wooden, Keitase mentioned, and Issei nodded. Then I shall bring both a wooden and steel sword. We eagerly await, Murayama stated. School went by quickly for Issei as lunch was next, and that was spent with Kaneko as he and her had the same lunch period. They spent it in silence, enjoying lunch and sweets. After that was some more private tutoring with Sona, and with that, school was over. Issei arrived at the ORC, spotting Rias at her desk as she was filling out some devil paperwork to make the transition from king to bishop finalized. Issei. Have a good day? I think so. I'm going to go to the Kendo Club actually and see what they have to offer. I could learn some things, I bet. I see. Please be gentle with the ladies. I will use some magic to make myself as weak as a strong human, so no harm will be done, I hope. Alright, have fun. The others have devil contracts to do. See you tonight, she said with a smile. Issei nodded and left carrying both gladius swords. One wooden, one steel. He arrived at the Kendo Club, though he wasn't aware of one thing. It was an entire club of women. As he opened up the door to the club, he was also unaware that the door he entered was the locker room where they changed. As he entered, all of the girls screamed from the male entering the room, only for Issei to bow to them. My apologies, Issei said, turning around on his heels swiftly before waiting outside of the changing room. And that's what they get for not having a sign up. Oh, there it is, Issei thought, seeing the sign was actually knocked down. About 3 minutes later, Keitase and Murayama led the other girls outside. My apologies. I didn't see a sign until now. It seemed to have been knocked down. It was screwed on earlier, seems someone took it down on purpose, Murayama said with a frown before she looked up at Issei. You didn't see anything, did you? I saw everything, Issei said truthfully, bowing his head. It was not my intention to see you as such. It's quite all right. It was obviously not your fault nor your intention, Keitase said, shrugging. You didn't ogle us and you left immediately. We can forgive. I am glad you are very forgiving, Issei said, following them as they walked behind the other girls, staying on either side of Issei. Out of curiosity, what did you think? Murayama said with a perverted grin. About us, Murayama stated. Murayama, Keitase said, blushing madly. What? Like you aren't wanting to know too, Murayama said with a slight blush. If you must know, you are both very beautiful women, and your bodies are amazing. You are perfect sizes and your pussies are neat and tidy with a perfect pink coloring, Issei said truthfully. Murayama and Keitase both had wide eyes at his words, seeing as he spoke without hesitation, nor did he even have a perverted smile, eyes, nor was his tone in any way perverted. He spoke from the bottom of his heart. Wow, you really are something, Keitei said. A gentleman, Murayama stated. It comes from where I grew up. Women were all the time and slaves were often offered women for their hard work. It was common for myself to see nudity. It ends up not being such a taboo that men don't go all googly-eyed like I've seen on TV. You were offered women? Keitei asked meekly. Yes. I was offered women. What exactly does that entail? Murayama asked. We would the women as hard and as long as we wanted. Did you ever have a woman? Murayama asked. No. Despite the fact I was offered many times, it just wasn't something I wanted. I wanted to escape, which I did, Issei said with a smile. You're still a virgin? Keitei asked with surprise. Quite, Issei said, following the two girls into the training room. Both of the girls had hard blushes on them, seeing how open Issei was with them, and the topic was quite erotic. Keitei and Murayama coughed and Murayama stepped forward. So you know your swords, huh? How about a spar with myself? What exactly does a spar in kendo mean? I was trained in sword fighting, but not the Japanese way. Do whatever it is you can to win, but do not purposely hurt your opponent. If that is what your wish is, I will do so. I am sorry if I hurt you, Issei said with a bow, placing the steel sword on a rack nearby before drawing his wooden gladius. Murayama smiled. I doubt you can, but let's put our armor on. I'd rather not wear armor unless it's on my lower legs or my forearm and wrist. If that is what you wish, Murayama stated. Issei bowed and put on the leather armor, smiling before bowing to Murayama, who bowed back. Murayama went forward first, aiming downwards with a strike, only for Issei to use his leather armor on his forearm to smack the blunt side of the sword aside as he pushed forward, quickly shoving Murayama up against the wall with the sword placed against her. Everyone had wide eyes, though Murayama and Keitei were the most surprised. You're fast, Murayama stated, and very precise. You hit the sword on the blunt with your wrist, Keitei stated. Was I wrong? No, if that is the way your sword style works, that's perfectly okay. We aren't going to force you to fight the way the Japanese do. Issei bowed again as he stood against Murayama, who struck once more, this time with a sideways slash. Issei placed his left hand behind his back and began to block every strike she was doing, moving backwards and forwards each time she struck. After about 20 strikes, she went for a strike on his left side, only for Issei to use his wooden sword and come from below, forcing her sword to go up and over his body into the right. With her entire sword being now made useless, Issei struck out with his right foot and smacked her in her right leg, sending her to her knees. He then moved forward and grabbed her hair and head, slamming her onto the ground, where he climbed up on top of her and aimed the sword down into a thrust, the tip placed near her. You're a lot better than we are, Murayama said, her eyes wide as well as the other girls. I've trained for a long time and I've actually had to use my sword in combat before. Really? Yes, the world I came from was dark, Issei commented, climbing off of the woman before offering her his left hand, which she took with gratitude. The club went on normally like that. Issei paired up with multiple people and ended up sparring with everyone in the club. He never once got struck by the others. The club ended around dinner time, so Issei waited outside of the changing room so he could say goodbye to the two women he befriended. It took them about 10 minutes, but they came out finally wearing their school uniforms. It was quite wonderful to have you in our club. Is it possible for you to teach us how to be better sword fighters? Keitei asked. I could do that sometimes. I don't want to take away your kendo training though, Issei said. You won't, Murayama interjected. We can do both, kendo one day, then your training the next. We could use the extra training so we can be efficient sword fighters, Keitei added. Then I would be glad to. I am part of the ORC, so I may not be able to attend some sessions, but I'll still come along, Issei said with a bow of his head. That's quite all right. Well, it's getting late. We have to head home. All right, I will see you ladies tomorrow, Issei said with a smile. Both Murayama and Keitei looked at each other before they ate Issei on the cheek. You're a sweet boy, Keitei said. Even though your life was shitty, you turned out to be a perfect man, Murayama said before they both walked away. Issei gently rubbed his cheek, smiling. Women really are a different kind of strange. Sona and Tsubaki were walking downtown when they spotted two figures in white robes. They both were carrying holy weapons. We must let Rias and Issei know, Sona said quietly. Issei arrived shortly at the ORC clubhouse, only to feel a strange sensation. It was uncomfortable but not painful. Wonder what's going on. I sense some presences, Issei thought before entering the old schoolhouse. He then opened the double doors into the club room itself. Sitting on the couch were two females who wore white robes while their hoods were down. On their laps were two holy swords. Issei noticed that Kiba had a very angry look towards the swords themselves. Interesting. He doesn't like those swords. Need to find out why. He's here. This here is Issei Hyoudou, and while I am the owner of this town, he is actually our master, so soon this territory will be his. For all intents and purposes, you will direct everything towards him as he is still in training. In training? I come here for the owner of this territory, which is you. Not him. When he owns it, then I will direct things towards him. Spoke the blue-haired girl, Zenobia. Issei merely raised a brow and walked behind them as they were on the couches, looking down at their heads before moving towards the opposite couch and taking a seat next to Kaneko. Quite an attitude on you. You really don't show respect towards other, do you? Not if you are a devil, no. Funny. Even I showed my enemy respect before I killed him. I do not care what you devils do. We are different. We are better. Oh really? Issei said with a grin. How interesting. Rias, you can go ahead and handle whatever business is here. I will just watch with amusement. So be it. Rias said. So what is the purpose of the contact? I wasn't even warned you were entering my territory, kind of a hush-hush mission. Can't let the word get out. Zenobia continued. Irina remained quiet. Fair enough. So what can we do for you? Well, let me explain what's going on. We can account for 6 of the 7 swords of Excalibur. 3 of them remain with the church, but the other 3 were stolen by fallen angels. Irina stated. Out of the 3 swords with the church, we carry 2 of them with us now. Zenobia added. I have the sword of destruction, and I have the sword of mimicry. So what is it you would like for us to do for you today? Rias asked. Stay out of our way. Do not interfere. This is between us and the fallen angels. That sounds like an accusation. Issei said. You say we would side with the fallen angels and keep you from obtaining these holy swords? Zenobia turned to Issei and smirked. We know for a fact that for devils, holy swords are detestable things. It would make sense for you to support the fallen angels. Issei nodded. That's a good point, but why would the fallen angels want to steal the swords? Wouldn't we rather fight the fallen angels to keep them from using the swords? That's also a possibility, but we would rather you not interfere. Well, I have no interest in whatever it is you guys have planned, however. If you cause threat to my town in any way, I will get involved and you will not like it. Is that a threat? Zenobia asked with a glare in her eyes. Yes. You can take it as it, but you should heed my warning. I will personally handle your punishment should you disobey me. You really have a big mouth for a devil, but here is a counter warning. You interfere with our fight against the fallen, and we will eradicate all of you. I will personally eradicate you, devil. Zenobia said. Both of the teenagers stared at each other and began to chuckle. I like you. You got backbone in you, and that is something I can respect. Issei said with a smile. Either way, I have no interest in interfering. You have full access to do whatever you wish in this town as long as you do not cause a problem for the residents of this town, devil or not. I can say the same towards you. You are a very respectable devil, unlike most or your kind. For a devil in training to be master of these lands, you are doing a magnificent job. Is that because I agreed to you? No. You're calm and you speak with respect. You lay down the law of your land and will hear out the enemy even if they aren't your current targets. Well, thank you. So, would you like some tea before you head off? No, thanks. I am not here to make friends with devils. We will let ourselves out. Zenobia said, standing up with Irina, who was quiet through most of the meeting. Before they left, Zenobia stopped and stared at Kiba, who was releasing an immense amount of hatred. Your servant here is releasing quite a lot of hostility. He has been fingering the sword on his belt for quite some time. Should I feel threatened? Zenobia stated, inching for her sword. Kiba, why are you so upset? I'm guessing you don't like those swords? Issei said, standing up. I hate them. Those swords are the reason I live. I will destroy them. Is that so? You care to test that? Zenobia taunted, and Kiba began to draw his sword, but Issei stood up. With his massive presence, he commanded attention. Now, let's do this outside. Issei said, walking between the two and opening the doors for the two of them. Issei, what are you doing? Rias demanded. Simple. Allowing Kiba to attempt to destroy something. Look at him, you can't deny him this. Plus, I would like to get to know these two a bit more. Something about them, Issei said before shaking his head. I am the master. Just trust in me. Issei said, smiling. Rias sighed and everyone followed Issei out. Kiba walked along Zenobia, with Irina next to Issei who had his hands behind his back. It took 10 minutes, but Kiba was defeated. He laid down on his stomach, blood pouring from his mouth. There was also a massive crater in the ground. Rias walked over and gently helped him up, giving him a drop of phoenix tears, not using the entire bottle. She turned to Zenobia with Kiba still looking up at her. It was about the size of 50 yards in all directions. Are you satisfied, Rias Gremry? It is not me who you need to speak to. I believe Issei here is the one you must satisfy. Rias said. Well, are you devil? Quite, though I must say I'm disappointed in you, Kiba. You lost your focus and your rationality with your last attack. You are not capable of using such a large sword when you've trained to use the normal sword you use. You and I need to have a chat later. Rias, take him into the house and get him to bed. I'll have to talk with him later. As for you, Zenobia and Irina, tell me, who exactly was the mastermind behind stealing your swords? Issei asked, glancing behind him as Rias left with Kiba in tow. Kaneko was also assisting. Akino was the last remaining member, one of the leaders of the Grigori. Kokabile. Zenobia answered. Does that mean he is strong? Issei asked, looking confused. You really don't know? Zenobia asked, a bit surprised and with arrogance. I have to apologize. I was frozen in time for over 2,000 years. I only recently awoke to the magical world. Akino sighed. Kokabile is a leader class. None of us could hope to stand against him, though you might. Akino stated. Ah. You think so? Issei asked, smiling a bit. I saw you in combat the other day. I think you might be on equal footing with the fallen angel. Interesting. Then if that's the case, you two priestesses or exorcists, whatever you are, have no chance against him. Excuse me? Zenobia asked, her eyes widening with a snarl. Your skill with the sword is decent, but overall you are lacquer. Issei stated, summoning a steel gladius which was blunted on all sides. It was not a killing weapon. If you wish to find out what I mean, strike at me. Issei stated. You really have a big mouth. I shall shut it. Zenobia stated. She charged right at Issei, jumped into the air and swung down. Issei simply sidestepped to the right, grabbed her leg and slammed her onto the ground. She still had a grip on her sword, but he quickly pushed his foot onto her arm and placed the blunt sword's tip against her. It was then he felt a slash across his back, though it wasn't deep. Issei glanced behind him to Irina, who was holding a katana. Did you really use such an underhanded move? You were about to kill her. Issei sighed and walked over to Irina before smacking her in the arm with the sword, only for her eyes to widen. It's blunted, she exclaimed. No shit. I only wanted to test you and see what you have in store for the fallen angel, and you disappoint me. You, like Kiba, rushed into combat without thinking and you left yourself wide open. Issei said, looking at Zenobia. Irina, I like that strike you did. I did not expect that. I approve. You didn't feel the holy power? You shouldn't even be standing. Irina said, looking at him with fear. It's as I thought. This is very interesting. Issei said with a grin. I guess I might have a strength against it. Who knows? Issei said, shrugging before looking at Zenobia, who stood up and held her sword at Issei. You have skill, but I wasn't thinking. Now let's see what you really got. Zenobia said. Issei nodded and smiled. Akino, could you please prepare some tea and snacks for later? I would really love to have your tea again. Of course. Please don't hurt them too bad. We don't want the church after us. Akino said with a smile and a bow. Issei had his back turned and Zenobia went forward to strike, but Issei knew it was coming. He could sense her movements and swung his sword back, blocking the Excalibur from hitting him. Wonderful work. Always take any advantage you can get against an opponent. Honor will get you nowhere. Issei praised before he pushed her back with a push of his sword. With that, Zenobia pushed once more and began to slash at Issei, who was simply blocking every strike with his own sword, moving back with each strike as he was doing what he did with the kendo girls. Test them. Train them. The training lasted for 3 hours, with a snack after 2 of them. Irina ended up joining into the training, which Issei approved of. He didn't even summon his shield, so he was playing a bit more seriously. They touched him a few times, slashing at him, which bled a little, but he defeated them soundly for the most part. Zenobia and Irina packed up their swords and Issei smiled. You two are decently trained. You just needed a bit more. You are quite knowledgeable with a sword. Zenobia commented. Where were you trained? Ancient Rome. Issei stated. What do you mean? Irina asked. Issei smiled. How about I see the 2 of you tomorrow for lunch and I can tell you. We shouldn't take charity from the devils. Why not? I'm not your enemy now and I may never be. Plus think of it this way. Your training partner just wants to buy you lunch and talk. What's wrong with that? Zinovia nodded but Irina looked at her. But he's a devil, and he defeated us soundly. Kokobile would have mopped the floor with us if we went after him. Zinovia countered, which got Irina to pout. Issei chuckled and nodded. Good. Meet me at the fountain in the town square around 11:30. Is that acceptable? Issei asked. Zinovia nodded. Quite. It was good to meet you, Issei Hyoudou. What? No calling me a devil? You earned the respect. Zinovia stated. Issei nodded and waved goodbye, heading back into the clubroom, where everyone, including Kiba, were in the main room. You sure took your time. Ria stated. New girlfriends of yours? No. Just some warriors who needed guidance. You know, giving help to the enemy can bite you in the butt. Rias pointed out. Issei shrugged. Perhaps, but that's a risk anyone takes. For all I know, you could be my enemy one day. Rias rolled her eyes at this response, so Issei turned to Kiba. Kiba. You will meet me tomorrow at the cafe in the town square tomorrow at 12:30. You can join me for lunch. You and I need to have a chat. Yes, sir. He said, bowing his head. Good. Rias, how am I doing so far? Issei asked. Perfect. You have a strong presence, which is good for a master and the owner of the territory. You lay out the law and you stick to it. You are also kind and generous and willing to help your group, which is what you are going to do with Kiba, right? Of course. I'll train him as well. It seems my skills as a gladiator come in handy in other ways outside of the arena. Issei said before letting out a yawn. He rolled his shoulders and stood up. Well, I'm off to bed. See you tonight. Issei said towards Rias and Aquino before he disappeared into the bedroom. Zinovia and Irina were standing within the abandoned church up on the hill within the town, Zinovia glaring at Zinovia from across the large bath. Irina was currently unaware of the angry stare from her partner and friend. I can't even bathe comfortably, whined Irina. I bet this is another trial from God. Oh Lord, why must you have me suffer so? Do you really think that? This is only you feeling guilty over wasting all of our money on that portrait of a holy man that doesn't even look like one. What? No way. There is a holy person in that portrait, and you know it. The exhibition guy said so. Oh yes, 'cause he didn't look at all suspicious. Good grief, why did I have to get paired up with you? Zinovia groaned, with a hand on her face as she was sitting down on the tile. Wow, you look really depressed when you get depressed. Oh, shut up. Zinovia snapped, only for both of their stomachs to rumble in synchronization. Well, first things first, we need something to eat. We are hardly in the shape to fight, especially someone like Kokobile. In that case, want to threaten people from other religions? Since they aren't with the church, God would totally forgive us. I think, if we would do that, it would be smarter to rob a temple of their offering box or something similar. On top of that, it isn't very nice-like to do so, and you forget. We are in the town of Issei Hyoudou. You seem to really like talking about that devil. Are you a traitor? Irina asked, narrowing her eyes in suspicion. It just made her look cute. I can't say that I like him as he is still a devil, but he's different. The way he acts, portrays himself, he's not like the devils we were told about. I know. He even is offering to buy us lunch tomorrow. Wonder if he will buy us breakfast too? Oh yes, that's a good idea. Let's beg the devil who is already being nice into being even nicer to us. Zinovia said sarcastically. Isn't it? Okay, it's settled. Irina said happily, not getting that she was being sarcastic. Good grief. Zinovia said, sighing. The morning came quickly for Issei as he had fallen asleep pretty quickly. He had doubled the physical activity with training Murayama and Kates, and then moving on to training the two exorcists, Irina and Zinovia. Issei wasn't a very hateful person. By nature, he was a nice person even though he had murdered many people. It wasn't his choice, and while he may have done it, he never changed his core personality. He was kind and caring. Zinovia and Irina may be enemies to the race of devils. They were not his enemy. In fact, he could see them being friends one day. He would like to be friends with anyone. Despite his personality, he did have hate in his heart. He hates those who abuses others and treats others like crap. He doesn't like the devil peace system, but he understands their importance. Luckily, he has learned that not all devils were like those who put him into the stone tomb. Issei was lying in bed awake, stroking the head of both Aquino and Rias, who were sleeping with him once again, which he expected. He was currently in his thoughts, staring at the two of them as they laid on his arms while their hands were curled on his sculpted chest. His thoughts were currently centered around his feelings towards them. Not them as in the two girls, them as in the ORC. He's never hated them, but he never really thought about it. Do I trust them? Issei thought. I think I do. Can I consider them allies? No friends? Maybe. I don't know if I can see them as allies. Would they go to battle with me? Have my back? Can I trust them to watch my back? Issei thought to himself before sighing. Guess I need more time with them, Issei said sadly before he smiled. Well, I can't say this is bad though. I am enjoying my life here, maybe I should consider them as friends. Issei thought with a grin. It was then his attention was brought from his thoughts at the sound of knocking, so he slowly inches his way out of the grasp of the two older females, despite the fact he was technically over 2,000 years old. The knocking was getting a bit more persistent, so Issei forgoes putting on a shirt and rushed across the main room. I'm coming, Issei said, opening the door only to spot the two exorcists from the day before. Zenobia and Irina were wide-eyed at the sight before them, seeing the masculine chest before them with the two large tattoos of black scorpions on his chest. You know that it's only 7 a.m., right? Most people aren't up this early and you are bothering the other members of this place. Issei complained only to see them both shake their heads. I'm so sorry. Zenobia stated, and Issei was wondering why she was sorry when Irina spoke up. We're here to ask you for breakfast. Irina stated, bowing her head. Please be kind and let us eat. Okay. Issei said, shrugging. Come on in. Irina rushed past Issei, leaving Zenobia behind. Issei raised a brow towards Zenobia and she bowed to him. I apologize, Irina is strange. Issei completed her sentence. It's quite all right. I have no ill will towards anyone except a few people in the world. I see. You are not like most devils. I wasn't a devil all my life. I was a devil for maybe 3 weeks, Issei said, not entirely sure. He hasn't counted. You were human? Was. I became a devil because my life was almost up, Issei said quietly, getting into a topic that was a bit uncomfortable. I won't ask any more, you seem unhappy. It's fine. If you wish to know more about me and my past, I'll share it. Maybe my troubles will help the world, he said with a sigh before beginning to make breakfast. Irina was busy taking care of her Excalibur sword while Zenobia was staring at Issei's back. You have a lot of scars, Zenobia stated. Medals of survival, Issei said. Each scar is a testament to my will to live. My ability to survive. I see. You said you were trained in ancient Rome. What exactly does that mean? Zenobia asked. Irina was now paying attention, so she sat nearby. The other devils were waking up at the time and began to enter the room, noticing Issei was cooking while the two exorcists from before were in the clubhouse. Well, I was born in Japan a little over 2,000 years ago. I don't know the exact math, but it's between 2,000 and 2,500 years ago. I was taken from my home on multiple slave ships, caravans and things. I found myself within the Roman Empire. I was taken to a man who owned a house of gladiators. I was trained from a young age to be a gladiator. We fought to the death constantly, and I've had to kill many friends. I was then betrayed by my own family, Issei said with air quotes on the family. He betrayed my men's position and targets to the Roman Empire and my master, and we were ambushed. From there, I was eventually captured and locked away by my master and the devil. I was punished by being put into a magically sealed Egyptian sarcophagus. Irina and Zenobia were shocked at this before Zenobia bowed her head. You have suffered much. I only wish that our side got you so you could be happy. I am very happy where I am, Issei stated, bringing out plates of food for everyone, including the other devils. I live my life just well here. I have friends now and a family. I also can assist those who need it with my past. My skills as a gladiator comes in handy to train you swordsmen and women to properly wield your weapon. I thought you said my skill was decent. I lied, Issei said with a chuckle. You guys wouldn't last long against the gladiator of ancient Rome, but maybe I'm just biased. Honestly, all I know is none of you could defeat me even if you ganged up on me at the same time. The sword isn't my only weapon. I wield a shield, sacred gear, Issei said with a grin. It seems even your god thought me being a gladiator was my destiny, Issei said with a chuckle. So you say we are weak? We are very good with our swords within our order. Again, I might just be biased. Honestly, all I know is I beat the both of you just fine, Issei said, shrugging. Not trying to offend you or anything. Now let's stop with this topic and get to breakfast. Will you still treat us to lunch? Irina asked, very curious. She really wanted lunch. Issei glanced towards Zenobia, who bowed her head towards him slightly, and Issei just chuckled. Sure. I have some things to discuss with the two of you anyway. Why not discuss it now? Irina asked with a tilt of her head. Zinovia smacked Irina's arm and glared. You don't ask that. It was obviously something just between the three of us. Geez, you are oblivious. Zinovia scolded, and Issei nodded, only for Rias to raise a brow at Issei. Don't trust us, Issei. Do you trust me completely? Issei countered, staring at her. Rias opened her mouth to speak but closed it. I thought not. None of you trust me to know what I am doing even right now because of these churchgoers, am I right? Sweetie, it's not that we don't trust your judgment, this is a dangerous move, we could start the war again. Aquino said, only for Issei to laugh. Start a war? With who? For what? Being nice to the church? Issei exclaimed. Zinovia, do you want to fight me to the death right now? No. Why? Why would I? Thank you? Issei pointed out. If I killed her right now, then yes, it was a dangerous move, but giving her food is not. It's an act of kindness. It's an act of respect. But they are the enemy. Kiba pointed out. So were my friends in the arena. So were the other gladiators in the houses. This isn't ancient Rome anymore, times have changed. Rias said. Oh please. Zinovia and Irina haven't made their choices to come and do anything. They are sent by their masters. Nothing's changed. We're all subject to our superiors, Issei said. You telling me you should never be kind? Even other devils? Don't we fight in arenas too? It's different. Rias exclaimed. No, it's not. We fight because our masters command us to. We do what we are told. Period. It's the same shit as what I went through. The only difference is, we knew we had no choice. You can't figure it out for yourself, Issei said, standing up with his plate of food. I will never change who I am. I will be kind to my enemies, as we are still part of the world we live in. Remember this, Rias. This is one world that we must share. We better get thee along, or we will lose everything we hold dear. Issei said, walking out of the room and heading outside. Issei left the area, walking through the town, heading towards the docks where the ships would sometimes come into port. It was also a popular fishing spot. As Issei walked along the docks, he spotted someone sitting on the edge with a fishing pole in the water. Normally, this wouldn't catch Issei's attention, but it was someone he recognized. Issei walked over towards the male and sat down. Ah, so you are still alive and well? Azazel asked with a smirk. Yes. I suppose I have you to thank for letting me out of that prison? Well, it was a group effort. Many people helped. Well, still thank you, Issei said. Not a problem. We all owe you quite a debt of gratitude, and to clear our conscience we are all going to work together to make sure you enjoy your life. Issei looked out towards the water. Is peace for all of us not going to happen? I wouldn't be so sure. There are currently plans being set up so we can all achieve peace, but there are some who don't want such things. Kokabile, Issei said, looking over at the male. You're a fallen angel like him, aren't you? Issei asked. Yes. I am a fallen angel, but I am not like him. He is a warmonger who has been let off his leash for too long. Yet you won't do anything. It's dangerous for a leader to fight another. We can't really afford losing our numbers. Yet Kokabile is sacrificial? Quite. He doesn't want peace. Azazel replied. You're a coward. You value yourself over others, so you refuse to take action. Issei said, standing up. You should be careful who you speak to. Please. I will go head first into combat if it means to keep my family safe. You sit on the sidelines and watch, praying that things don't go wrong for your plans. You're a coward. If you weren't a coward, you would help fight against your own race that is doing wrong. Issei said, walking off. Don't even consider giving me anything to enjoy my life if you aren't going to help me when my life is in danger. Issei scoffed, heading off towards the town square. Issei entered an arcade within the town square, looking around curiously. He went towards a fighting game that looked interesting. It had a few buttons and a stick. After a game or two, Issei began to get the hang of it and continued to beat up the computers. It was then someone joined him. It was an attractive young woman with long black hair like that of a raven. She had violet eyes and a large bust. She was wearing a hood, however. Kokabile will strike at your school tomorrow night. Please act natural and game with me as I speak. You're being watched, the woman said softly. Issei was listening, but he also focused on the game, beating up the woman in the process, who acted natural and stomped her foot in frustration. How strong is he? Very, but he fears you. Ever since word got out that you escaped your prison, Kokabile has changed his plans drastically. He has set this plan in motion long ago, but only recently it's changed. He's bringing a large force with him, fallen angels and exorcists. What are his plans? He is coming here for Rias Gremory and Sona Tsubaki, hoping it would start the three-way war once again. But now that you are here, he is coming to kill you as you are a threat to his plans. Who are you? I am one of his subordinates, but I do not wish for this. At first I thought Kokobile was right, but I then realized he is going mad, plus he will kill anyone who betrays him. You can stay with me for protection. My best friend is pretty much hostage. She stays with the others at all times, and between she and I am the only one with the freedom to move. I see. Will you assist me in the battle when the time is right? I will do so, but I must maintain appearance until the time is right. I will say this again, he fears you. You are stronger than you think, she said before stomping her foot again and storming off. Issei kept playing his game for about 5 more minutes before he left, heading to the cafe. This is something I cannot ignore. He is coming for me and my new family, and I will not let them die. Issei thought. But this information I just received is also good. He fears me, Issei said before grinning. Good, he said before entering the cafe. He took a seat, and after he got his water, he saw Zenobia and Irina enter the establishment and sit down. You said wait by the fountain. We waited for so long. Irina complained. It was 5 minutes before I spotted your head. She exaggerates, Zenobia said. So what is it you wish to speak to us about? I'm going to assist you in your mission against Kokobile, Issei said, looking at them. What? But you're a devil. You can't do that. Irina exclaimed, only for Issei to shush her. Quiet down. Not so loud. As for that, I can do whatever I want in my territory, but it's not your territory, she said once more, only to get a glare from Zenobia and Issei. Zenobia turned to Issei. Why do you wish to help us all of a sudden? There is a traitor within the midst of Kokobile who has given me some information. Kokobile comes to this town in particular to kill Rias and Sona, the sisters of 2 of the Devil Kings, Zenobia stated. Smart move to get the war started. That is his plan. He also comes here with a large force of subordinates. Really? We only have word that he is traveling light. Things have changed. The man fears me, Issei said. Zenobia nodded. I understand. So an army is brought with him? Can't be that large as it would get suspicious for him, but yes. A large force is here. Zenobia nodded again. So what is the plan? Zenobia! Irina stated, only for Zenobia to look at her. Did you not hear Issei? This isn't something we can ignore. This affects everyone, including us. What would you think would happen if that war got started? God would have to fight again. Zenobia snapped back. Irina, could you really go on, knowing you had a chance to save the world we live in but did nothing? Issei asked. No, I couldn't. Then help me, Issei said. I need the both of you to assist me in this battle coming. You will have my sword, Zenobia stated. And mine as well, Irina said with a smile. And you shall have mine, Kiba stated, appearing from behind Issei. You were there all along? Issei asked, surprised. Was curious about what you wanted to talk about with the 2 of them. The others are here as well, Kiba stated, with Akino, Rias and Kaneko all coming from different booths to sit with them. We heard everything and we get it now, Rias stated. This is something we cannot ignore, and sometimes, even our allies can come from those who are our enemies, she said. So what's the plan? Kaneko asked. Issei smiled and prepped their war plan. The plan was set in place. The pieces were moving into motion, though only one last thing remained. Sona Citri was the last remaining obstacle to Issei's plan, and Rias was the best one to obtain her assistance. As such, Rias and Sona were sitting in Sona's personal bathhouse. You are doing what? Sona exclaimed, glaring at Rias. You heard me. We're going to attack Kokobile. Are you insane? What would make you think this was a good idea? This was the only idea, Issei to Rias said, only to get interrupted by Sona. Issei? You are listening to him. He lives in a world 2,000 years in the past. He has no idea what he is talking about. This could possibly start a war that could kill our parents, our friends, our loved ones. You are so infatuated with him that you can't see that, Sona said, enraged. You are the only one who isn't thinking clearly, Sona. You have some bias towards Issei that you can't see that he is right. Excuse, Sona said, only to get interrupted by Rias this time. Sona, you are never one to talk like this or think without rational thought. You are the calm and collected one of us. I am the emotional one, Rias said. Sona was fuming, but she sat back down and closed her eyes, relaxing herself so she could think properly. It took her a few minutes, but she nodded with a sigh. Why are you going through with this plan of his? What did he say or promise to you for you to follow him? Nothing but logic. I trust him. Rias, this is suicide. Even if you do trust him, this is Kokabile, one of the leaders of the fallen angels. He survived the war. He is not an opponent we can take lightly. I know that, which is why we need everyone we can get. Sona, he is here to start the war again. If we don't do anything, he will succeed. We can run away. Sona pointed out. You would run away? You would run away letting him destroy our town, destroy the school you protect? Are you that afraid for your own life? I am only pointing out that fighting is not the only strategy. Living to fight another day is part of war. There is no war here, Sona, unless he makes it. We have the chance to stop him, and save our kind from destruction. Sona groaned and rubbed her temples. Fine, but he and you owe me. Sona said, crossing his arm. As long as you are on board, I am fine with it. Issei stated, appearing from a magic circle. Were you listening the entire time? Sona said, narrowing her eyes at him. Only for the last 10 seconds. Issei said, taking a seat next to Rias. All three were. What is your plan to kill Kokabile? An ambush. Kokabile comes with fallen angels of his own faction and some stray priests. I was hoping you could come up with a good strategy. Issei said, staring at Sona. Rias says you are the smartest of us all, so I am hoping you can create the plan to lead us to victory while I lead it. Sona hummed for a bit, and was deep in thought before she brought up a magical holographic map of the town. Where do you think he will attack? Sona said. I don't know. Where would the logical place be? If he's bringing in forces, it would have to be a wide open space. He wants to start a war here, right? How would he do that? By killing you and I, Rias stated. Then, knowing Kokabile to be the crazed warmonger, it's most logical that he would plan his assault here at this school. It is the gathering place of all the powers in this town, Sona stated, removing everything but the school and its grounds. Issei nodded and looked forward. We are allied currently with the 2 exorcists that came to this town, so they will assist us in this. I see. So you have multiple sword users, so I will lend you Tsubaki and Tomo for this battle. Are you sure? Rias asked. Yes. I am confident that those 2 would be good warriors for Issei's assault. You have a plan? Issei asked. Yes. We will put magical traps all over our school grounds. As soon as the teleportation magic occurs and they start appearing, the traps go off. It will kill some, but the purpose is to disorient and weaken them, leaving me to charge in with the others and assault them all while they are still disoriented. Shock combat. Issei commented. Yes. Since you are outnumbered, we would lose quite a few of our comrades if the enemy was at full strength, but now the playing fields are even. The only problem is Kokabile himself. He will be hardly affected, if at all, by the traps. Well, he is going to most likely go for me. He wants to remove me from the playing field regardless. He fears me apparently. Issei said. I see. This means that you need to quickly move towards Kokabile, and keep him distracted before he can start annihilating our forces. Once we eliminate his reinforces, we can gang up on him and remove him completely from the fight. This is good, it makes use of our combat talents. Rias stated. You are a purely offensive team. Sona said with a smile. I know you very well, Rias. Well, it works out in this situation, as a defensive team would leave us weak against the enemy forces. Rias replied. Correct, and Tsubaki has some defensive capabilities with her sacred gear. Sona said with a nod. Issei smiled. Well, I think it's best we get some last-minute training in and maybe a nap. Issei replied. We just have to be ready tonight. Issei stated. Yes. Sona said. Rias, Tsubaki, Akino and I will get started on the traps. Sona said, summoning her clothes. Let's go, Rias. Right. She said before teleporting away. Issei left himself through a magic circle. Issei arrived at the club room where everyone else was located at. Upon the arrival, Zenobia turned and eyed him. Do we have the other devil's assistance? Yes. She was convinced. We already have the plan being put into motion. We are going to trap the fallen angels, and while they are confused and weakened, we attack and slaughter them all. Zenobia grinned. I am beginning to like you more and more, devil. She said. Thanks. Issei said, raising a brow. Well, now it's time to get some training in. We go to the gym in the school now, and from there we train. Everyone nodded and left with Issei. It was now 8 p.m. when Issei and his peerage, Tsubaki and Tomo, were waiting in the gym of the school. Since it was centered in the middle, they could reach any part of the school quickly. They had just finished their naps, so they were just waiting, hoping that Issei's informant was correct in their information. Issei walked over to Rias. Did you contact your brother like I asked? I tried, but I told Grafia I hope he gets the message. Rias said. Do you think we can manage without my brother? If things go as Sona planned, I would say yes, but this is war. This man has to have tricks up his sleeve, but this is the only way. We have to stop him. I know. It was then Issei noticed that magic circles were appearing outside in the main grounds. Issei stood up and coughed. This is it. This is the fight that will save our world. This man wants to start a war and destroy everyone in it. Devils, fallen angels, angels. Everyone will die if we don't stop this. Not one side can afford for this war, so we must not fail. Kokabile must be stopped. If we don't, no one will. We have contacted the 2 devil leaders for assistance, but no confirmation on their assistance. We are alone. Watch each other's backs and let's give them hell, Issei said, summoning his shield as the explosions began occurring, the screaming and yelling of the fallen angels clearly being heard. Charge! Issei roared, rushing outside with Zenovia right next to him. The others quickly moved, following Issei into battle. Issei and the others were letting out their roars of war, charging into the horde of fallen angels and stray priests. They were outnumbered 10-1, but they charged headfirst into them. Issei and Zenovia were the first to strike, charging side by side, swinging their blades into the army. A few seconds later, the others slammed into the army of disoriented fallen angels. They looked confused and their swings with their light spears were wild. The battle was over within minutes, the spells working wonders, and Issei was already charging right at Kokabile. Rias looked at Akino. This was too easy, Rias said softly. Of course it was. You didn't think this was it, did you? Kokabile said with a laugh. Kokabile was a young man with black hair, pointed ears and 5 pairs of black wings. His eyes were golden with red where it should have been white. He had sharpened fangs in his mouth, and he looked very much the monster he was portrayed. Kokabile collided both of his light spears against Issei, holding him back as he was chuckling. It was then more magic circles were appearing and more fallen angels were appearing, but that wasn't all. An old man and a stray priest exited one. The old man was preparing a magic circle as they were far away from the fight. 3 large 3-headed dogs appearing from magic circles and began to attack, pushing them all back. Zenovia and Irina were against the pack of 4 fallen angels, while Rias, Akino, Kaneko, Kiba, Tsubaki, Tomo were fighting against the dogs, though they were losing ground. Rias and Akino paired against one, Kaneko, and Kiba to another, while Tsubaki and Tomo were against one as well. Near Kokabile, more fallen angels were appearing from magic circles, appearing out of nowhere as they began to advance on Issei as well as advance on the other fallen. You really think that it was going to be so easy to defeat me, boy? Kokabile said with a sneer. You don't seem to fear me. Of course I don't fear you. I respect you. You are a warrior. You are certainly a threat, but you aren't someone I fear. However, now I know who told you everything. That I would attack tonight, that I was ready to fight. That I fear you, Kokabile said, pushing Issei back with both swords before turning to Rainier. I knew you were a traitor to my cause. I always knew. Well, say goodnight, little bitch. Your friend will die when I return home, Kokabile said, throwing one of his spears right at Rainier, who was being held still by 2 other fallen. One had a trench coat and a fedora on, and he was holding onto her right arm, while a woman with long blue hair was holding onto her left arm. Rainier was captured early on as she was found out to be a traitor. Issei saw the spear and his shield before he threw it fast, the shield behind the spear but catching up. Rainier saw the shield come in quick, so she quickly moved her left arm, forcing the female holding onto her to move forward, who was struck with the shield in the back, the large point coming through her chest. The light spear thrown by Kokabile was deflected off the shield into Donasik, who was instantly destroyed. Rainier quickly flew backwards, disappearing into a magic circle as she went off to save her friend. Irina and Zenovia were missing several parts of their robes, and they had cuts and bruises forming on their bodies. The devils fighting the dogs all shared the same burns from flame, though Kaneko was the least affected by the burns. Kiba also had a hole in his leg as he was bitten by one of the dog's heads. Rias and Akino were running out of magic power, their abilities weakening. Zenovia was also wielding a different sword from Excalibur. It was a unique-shaped broadsword that had a blue blade with golden edges. It had a semicircular guard on the left side of the handle that extended towards the bottom just above the pommel. There was a small extension on the right side of the handle as well. The sword was slightly bigger than Zenovia, but she wielded it with ease and fire. You are stupid, Kokabile said towards Issei, who turned to Kokabile only to find a fist encased in light give him an uppercut. Kokabile grabbed onto Issei and pulled him back from being thrown into the air only to punch him in the gut, and then give him a right cross. Issei dropped his sword from the uppercut. You throw away your only chance at defending against me in order to save a lowly fallen angel. You are pathetic, Kokabile stated, punching Issei in the gut before giving him another uppercut, sending him up against the wall of the school. Issei's mouth was bleeding heavily, and his nose was broken. This is why I don't have to fear you. You can't do anything. Issei followed up with a super powerful strike into Issei's gut, forcing bile and blood to spill from Issei's mouth in a cough. Kokabile then grabbed his hair and threw him to the ground. Watch as your friends fall. Kokabile taunted. Issei was barely looking, seeing as the white-haired stray priest stabbed Irina from behind, his Excalibur being shoved into her lower back through her stomach, while the other hand was groping Irina's chest. You led your friends and family into a trap. What was the purpose? To stop me? Kokabile asked rhetorically. He was enjoying the despair he felt from Issei's body. Issei watched as Rias and Akino were bitten in their side by one of the dogs and Kaneko was swallowed whole. You could never stop me. You see why I could never fear you. Kokabile continued to taunt. Kiba was finally smacked down by one of the dogs who bit him in the side. Kiba was wielding a sword that Issei didn't recognize, though it didn't matter. It's because you are weak just like your friends. How pathetic. Holy demonic sword wielder, sister of Lucifer, an Excalibur wielder, and the user of Durandal. How pathetic. How weak. How disappointing, Kokabile said with a grin, forming a large spear in his left hand, gripping the spear with his right. All of his friends were now passed out from their damage. The dogs were preparing to eat the others while the fallen angels and the priest were preparing to execute Zenobia. I am not weak, nor are my friends, Issei said as he spat out blood. His shield was summoned from the ground, flying right into his hands as he blocked the spear from Kokabile. Issei pushed upwards into Kokabile, pushing him back before Issei climbed to his feet. Issei charged into Kokabile and knocked the spear out of Kokabile's hands before slamming the shield into his face before bashing him over and over with the shield. He then did a 360 move, bringing the front of the shield into an uppercut which launched Kokabile into the school, slamming him into the wall. My friends will not die today, Issei said, only to see Azazel come in out of nowhere and blow up 2 of the 3 dogs with a single light spear. You came. I couldn't let you call me a coward and then die before I can kick your ass for that, Azazel said with a grin, only for Issei to smile. I will save your friends. None of them have died yet, so go kick Kokabile's ass, Azazel said. With Azazel assisting Issei's friends, Issei nodded. He was going to try something that he hoped would work. Issei closed his eyes and put his right hand into the air, a magic circle, that was his own, which was the color of white with a scorpion logo in the middle, appearing on his hand. I call forth the sword of my birth. The sword I was given when I was only a boy. Excalibur. As soon as Issei finished his cry of help, every living being turned towards Issei as several ghostly white auras surrounded the 3 swords that remained. Excalibur Destruction, Excalibur Mimic, and the fused swords of Nightmare, Transparency, and Rapidly. All 3 swords flew into the air towards Issei as magic circles appeared, and one more sword appeared from the magic circle. In a far-off place, sitting in a room reading a book, a bespectacled man with blonde hair with a strand of hair across his face felt something change. He looked down and noticed that one of the 2 swords on his belt began to rumble. I see you reject me, the man said, pulling the sword out. Then find your master so I may see why you chose him as worthy of you, spoke the man, watching as the sword entered a magic circle that had a scorpion in the middle. It was then the 7th sword appeared for Issei, shooting out towards the other sword. Issei looked back and noticed that Azazel had rescued Kaneko from the belly of the beast. Azazel had killed the remaining fallen angels and Zenobia had killed the priest and the old man. Azazel escaped out of the way of being seen by the others. The devils were all awake now, watching as the Excaliburs finally fused into a single broadsword. How did you do that? Kokabile demanded. I am the one true wielder of the sword Excalibur. It was given to me by someone when I was still a slave in ancient Rome. It was that day that I became undefeated in the arena. I never knew this sword was magical, but it matters not. I will not make you pay for all the pain you caused me and my friends. Time to die, Issei said, disappearing from the eye, as did Kokabile. You think you can stop me because you have a new sword? Kokabile roared, the dual spear fighting style versus the sword and shield. Issei and Kokabile continued to use their speed to clash at each other, either getting the chance to do any damage to the other. No! I know I can stop you. She wasn't wrong. You do fear me. I can see it in your eyes. You are nothing, Issei roared, only for Kokabile to use both swords in a single strike to remove his shield from his arm. Kokabile, however, made a mistake. He left himself open. Issei thrusted Excalibur into the side of Kokabile, penetrating the stomach of the fallen angel cadre, though wasn't deep, as Kokabile flew back. You little shit! You dare challenge me? I will destroy you. You insult my friends, you insult my intelligence, and now you take me seriously? You are nothing to me. You are a pathetic little boy. Issei closed his eyes and felt the power coming from the shield. Issei opened his eyes and put out his right hand and arm, aiming it towards the shield that was thrown aside by Kokubile. Issei opened his eyes and was about to speak, but Kokubile was right there, aiming to remove his. It was then a powerful bolt of lightning came out and struck Kokubile in the side, sending him skidding away. You dare strike me, you pathetic little half-breed? When I am done with this boy, I will make it nice and slow for you. Kokubile sneered. Then tell your dear old daddy Barakiel how easy it was to kill his devil daughter. You dare insult her? Issei said, his eyes wide. Insult her? I was only telling the truth. Half fallen and half devil. Truly a disgusting combination. The only disgusting thing is you, and I shall get rid of it. Come forth, my balance breaker. Issei roared, his shield disappearing into particles before in his outstretched left hand formed another gladius. Scorpion Stinger! The gladius in his left was the balance breaker of Scales of Grendel. It was a subspecies sacred gear that came forth for Issei's feelings to have more power. In his right was Excalibur, a sword of legend that was reformed at Issei's heed. The original wielder of this sacred sword. Excalibur had a handle of silver coloration. It wielded a golden pommel that was heavily weights. It had a ruby in the center on each side. The cross guard was golden as well, that was shaped like a dragon's wings with the points going upward. The blade itself was a magnificent silver like its handle with golden inscriptions within the blade. The inscriptions read the powers of each blade, or the name: rapidly, destruction, blessing, ruler, mimic, nightmare, and transparency. In his left was Scorpion Stinger. It was a gladius with a black pommel that held an amethyst gem in the center on both sides. The hilt was black as was the cross guard. The cross guard was shaped like a dragon's wings but was tilted downwards. The wings had red outlines. The blade was a very dark silver, almost gray. The sword held a malicious aura while Excalibur held a divine aura. You think that is going to stop me? You are nothing to me. I survived God, you know. I outlived God, Kokubile said, his tone full of fear. He had even just revealed that God was dead. He threw a spear towards Akino and Rias, only for Issei to move in front of the spear and swing the stinger, cleaving the attack in two, which forced it to disperse into particles. You lose, Issei said with a snarl, dashing forward with the power of Excalibur, before appearing next to Kokubile. He bashed Kokubile in the jaw with the pommel of Excalibur before slicing off a chunk of flesh of his chest with the stinger. Kokubile began to swing towards Issei, but Kokubile was going insane. His wings were inaccurate and wild, so Issei had the advantage. Issei just hacked away at Kokubile's body with both swords. He would slash with Excalibur on his chest and just swirl around, the stinger being drawn along his chest and sides and his back. It was like his body was butter. I won't lose to you, Kokubile cried. He slammed a spear into Issei's shoulder before he began to fly away towards a magic circle that was forming, but Issei was faster. Even with a spear still in his shoulder, Issei kept moving. You don't need these wings, Issei said, both blades being swung down and cleaving off all of his wings in two motions. One each. Kokubile cried and fell to the ground, attempting to run away, but his opponent was relentless. You damn bastard, Kokubile stated, only to vomit up a massive amount of blood that was blacker than normal. I should have killed you when I had the chance. Yes, you should have, Issei said, placing both swords criss-cross behind Kokubile's neck before Spartan kicking Kokubile in the chest, which sent his neck through the swords, beheading him. Issei fell to his knees and spat a wad of blood from his chest. Issei reached up and grabbed onto Kokubile's spear, removing the power of light from his shoulder before he collapsed to his hands and knees. The wound was sizzling, but it wasn't as lethal towards Issei as it would have been to another devil. Issei stayed there for about 30 seconds before he stood up and stumbled towards the others, falling in front of Akino and Rias only for them to grab him before he could, helping him. I'm so sorry for everything, Issei said, groaning. Don't be, you saved us in the end, Rias said quietly. Issei was about to say something but moved himself from Rias and Akino, stumbling to the form of Zenobia and Irina. Zenobia was kneeling over Irina, who had stopped breathing. The wound was too great. I may not be someone you like right now because I led you all to your deaths, for I was too weak. But I can do something, right? Issei said softly before spitting up blood. He had sustained many injuries. Issei pulled out a single pawn piece and placed it onto Irina's chest. I will save her, Issei said quietly. I command you to rise from the grave in service of myself, the Scorpion. Rise and help me destroy my enemies, Issei said before he fell onto his stomach, passing out from his injuries completely. A night piece fell from his pocket. Issei woke up around 8 a.m., a few hours later than he would normally wake up. As soon as he awoke, he felt sore. His chest ached in certain locations, generally in the pecs and the shoulder. His stomach groaned in pain with each movement, and his face wasn't feeling very well either. He then remembered what had happened the night before. Issei was assaulted with multiple attacks from a leader-class fallen angel. His body had been battered by a knuckle duster formed by the power of the light, which was backed by the power held by the fallen angel. He then suffered multiple slashes with a light spear/sword before he was impaled in the shoulder. Only his experience as a gladiator saved him, as he ignored the pain and fought on until one of them would have fallen. He looked around him and spotted Rias, Akino and now Kaneko, who was curled up around his body, all three of them. He looked down at his chest and wondered how he healed so fast, but figured it was why Kaneko was in his bed and why all three of them were, considering Akino was a fan of using negligee. They helped me heal, I don't deserve them, I almost got them killed, Issei thought, his face looking darker and deeper into despair, only to feel a hand on his chest which got him out of his stupor. You are making such a dark face, you really shouldn't, Rias said softly. Issei noticed that Akino and Rias were both awake. I almost got you all killed, I was too weak, I was too bold, too stupid. Sona was right. I'm worthless. Sona was right that we went too boldly into the fight without thinking, but even she agreed the plan was good. She also agreed that this was the best option. Rias said, You didn't almost get us all killed. Akino stated. You are the reason why we are all still alive. You saved us all from those creatures and you defeated Kokobile. You aren't weak. Kaneko said softly, shifting a bit higher on his right leg, which she snuggled as she was between his two legs. You stood against a fallen angel and survived. You also killed him. He could have killed me easily, only because you threw away your shield to save another. You were selfless in that fight, and no one will forget that. Akino stated, smiling. Trust us, you aren't weak, she said, patting his chest before sitting up and getting out of bed. Kaneko and Rias followed. Let us treat you to some breakfast. Plus you have to meet your two new peerage members when they are ready, Rias said, dressed in a pair of red track pants and a red t-shirt that hugged her curves. Akino wore matching purple clothing. Kaneko wore a pair of black shorts and a white t-shirt that had a cat's paw print on it. Two new members? You revived Irina as she died in the battle against Kokobile, and then Zenobia decided to join you. I hold some of my original power as a king, so I revived her for you. You're welcome. Rias stated with a smile. I see. Issei said, sitting up before he went to get dressed. He was in the bed at the time. Rias and Kaneko left with Akino staying behind as she waited for Issei to finish getting dressed. Akino walked behind him as they went off to the clubhouse kitchen. You didn't even get hard except in the morning. Are you even attracted to women? Akino asked, curiosity in her tone. Of course I am attracted to women. I just have a lot of self-control due to my conditioning. I see. Do you not find us attractive then? Akino asked. Do you ask that because I do not get hard around you females? Issei asked, only for Akino to nod silently. I find all of the females I've seen attractive. I don't know what happened, but people have gotten even more attractive since I was a gladiator. Even with the fact all the women nowadays wear clothes everywhere, you guys are more attractive. So it has nothing to do with how pretty you are. You are all very pretty women. I just have a lot of conditioning to avoid getting hard. I see. Akino said with a smile. Guess we just have to get you laid. Okay. Issei said with a shrug. He wasn't even saying no, which got Akino to raise an eyebrow at his response. What? Just because I don't get a hard-on doesn't mean I don't have an interest in sex. I'm a virgin because I refuse to be like the other gladiators or people back then. Consider it spite for my master. I refuse to even pleasure the women that he told me to. I have no problem ing the women in my life. I have no one to spite. No reason to refuse. You don't believe in saving yourself for love? That's a thing? Issei said, raising an eyebrow. Akino nodded. Well, no, I don't believe that. I don't consider sex a treasured act. It's an act of pleasure or reproduction. I am from a different time, Akino. Issei said. The two of them were standing in the hallway, facing each other, as Issei leaned against the wall. I don't believe in the things you guys do. I told you that I honestly don't see a need for clothing or a fear of nudity. Times are different, but if you ever want to have sex, just ask or come and try to initiate it. You are a very beautiful woman and someone I treasure dearly. Akino nodded happily, and with a smile, she hugged his neck and ate his cheek before heading off to breakfast. Issei followed her very shortly after. Issei grabbed a quick breakfast out of what Rias and the others made, thanking them for the food. He had grabbed a plate of eggs, sausage and toast, before he left, saying he was going to go train. He gave them the location through the magic circle, saying that if they come they were to prepare for extreme cold. With that, Issei teleported away. A few minutes after, Zenobia and Irina came from their own sleeping quarters within the old schoolhouse, with Irina looking very distraught. Zenobia had explained several things to her, and she wasn't taking them well. "You don't look well," Rias stated. "You alright?" "Why yes, just," Irina started. "You're having trouble coming to the fact you are a devil since you were part of the church beforehand," Rias stated as if she was right. Irina just nodded while Zenobia placed a hand on her shoulder. She was a bigger devoted Christian than even myself. "This will be tough for her," Zenobia said quietly. "Even I am having problems coming to the fact that even I chose to be a devil." "Why did you even chose to be one?" Irina questioned loudly, turning to Zenobia with anger in her eyes. "I will not have any of that fighting in my clubhouse," Rias stated. She summoned a magic circle and also placed a magic circle on their backs. "You can do this with your new master. Issei awaits on the other side. Now go," Rias said, shooing them away as she returned to their dinner. It was then Zenobia just shoved Irina into the circle and let the circle disperse, heading to the breakfast table. Aquino had a hard time holding in her laughs, seeing what Zenobia just did. "Thought it was best for her to talk to Issei. Issei just has a way," Zenobia said with a shrug. "Fair enough," Rias stated, returning to her breakfast. Upon arrival, Irina was pelted with a massive blizzard which she began to block her face from. She stepped forward a few steps and found herself inside of a tent which was really warm. She looked around and saw nothing, only to hear a voice. She had somehow missed it, but Issei was on the ground on his back in the snow, lifting a large boulder. "So, you are awake," Issei said with a grunt, continuing to lift the boulder up and down with both of his hands, grunting with each push-up. "Yeah, thanks to you," Irina said quietly, watching the shirtless devil work out in such a deadly environment. "Wouldn't it be better to do this in a gym?" "I prefer it my way," Issei said. "But it's so barbaric." "Barbaric? Is that what you consider me to be? A barbarian?" Issei asked, chucking the rock away from him and slowly sitting up, brushing off the snow as he walked into the tent. "What, I know! It's just normal people work out in gyms." "Well, I'm not a normal person. I remember now, you and Rias talked about you being nice to Zenobia and she said it wasn't ancient Rome anymore." "Ah, so you remember things?" "Well, if you want to know, I can tell you." "What did she mean by all of that?" "I was born over 2,000 years ago as a human. I was taken from my home on a slave ship, taken halfway across the world to Italy, or back then it was known as the Roman Empire. I was sold to a man who trained me to be a gladiator. I fought in arenas to the death, all for the pleasure of the crowd. After a while I rebelled and I escaped from being a slave, forming an army of gladiators. I fought back against the Roman Empire, but I lost. My master made a pact with the devil, who trapped me inside of a stone sarcophagus. I was in that sarcophagus for 2 years, awake for all of it. I was released by Rias's brother and a few other higher-powered people. So, that's what she means, is because I have yet to let go of the world I knew. You became a devil even though devils were the ones who hurt you, not of my free will. At first, I actually held Aquino hostage with a knife to her. I was planning to kill her at one point," Issei said with a smile. "Man, only been a few weeks and things have changed. How fun," Issei said quietly. "But now I am proud to be where I am. I am happy. I have people who care for me. I am no longer bound to chains and I have so much more freedom. But the church says devil are bad. I didn't have the church back when I was a slave, so I wasn't brought up to think that way. I am able to think my own thoughts about things and form my own opinion. Are you not happy?" "No. I am an avid believer of the Bible, and now I am what my mortal enemies were. God would never forgive me." "How can you be so sure?" "If I was this God, and people worshipped me, I wouldn't care where my worship came from. I wouldn't care about someone was born or what was forced upon them. I would care about what was in their heart," Issei said, placing his hand upon her left, which was above her heart. "And I see a woman who has given her all to be a good person and to follow her own beliefs. I see a woman who is strong, confident, and beautiful. God won't care about you becoming a devil. He would only care that you do what is right," Issei said with a smile, placing the hand that was on her chest to her head, gently rubbing her. Irina was blushing madly, her violet eyes looking up at Issei with worship. "You are right," Irina said with her old enthusiasm. "God won't care. He knows that I love him. Dear God in heaven, forgive my bad thoughts. Amen." Irina stated, only to yelp in pain as she held her head and went into a crouch. Seems I have more work to do, Issei said quietly before he walked around Irina. I think it's time I return to my training. Fighting Kokobio revealed that I need to be stronger. Faster. Just better than I was the day before. I must continue to rise in power. Irina nodded. I will help you, if you wish, Issei said, giving her a magical boost so she wasn't cold. From there on, they trained together. Even Irina did a little training to her body. Irina and Issei returned from Mount Everest around 7 in the evening. Dinner was being prepared to be put away by Akino and Rias when they came from a magic circle. Didn't expect you to take so long to talk with Issei, Rias said with a smile. Enjoy yourself. Very talking with Issei has given me a reason to continue to exist, Irina said happily. Issei shrugged and quickly helped himself to a plate of the Italian dressing pork and mashed potatoes, which Irina copied him and sat down. He even trained me with a sword despite no longer having one. We'll get you a strong sword, Issei said with a chuckle. You are doing much better with your sword attacks. I am proud of you. I only learn from the best. Issei shook his head. I don't think I am the greatest sword fighter at all. I don't even think my style of fighting is perfect either. I just think that most of what you are taught isn't good either. Battle experience is what you need. Reflexes, endurance, and just plain old experience. Once you get into enough battles, you learn your own style. Just take your time, train with your sword and you'll become really good. Okay, Issei. Irina said only to blush when Issei patted her head before he returned to his meal. He doesn't even realize how much of a good man he is. All three present females though what as they looked at him eat. It was then Rias remembered something. Oh Issei. I just remember that you have a devil contract waiting for you. Devil contract? Issei asked, not sure what those were. It's basically a way for the Devil Society to gain more power. It's possible that we can get new devils through a contract, Akino said. It's also a way to rank up in Devil Society. I see who requested me? Wasn't you specifically, but the wish was for a great and powerful devil to help them. They would prefer a swordsman. We instantly thought of you, Rias said with a shrug. I see. Well, I will go do it after dinner. Can you prep a magic circle for me, please? Issei asked, which Rias obliged and set one up. Issei quickly finished his meal and walked into the magic circle, letting out a loud burp as soon as he arrived through the circle. Issei, you're a devil? Murayama exclaimed. Issei was surprised at seeing them but didn't show much. Oh well, hello ladies, Issei said with his very warm smile. I am very much a devil. Is that why you are so good at being a swordsman? Kate said with a pout, feeling like Issei was cheating. Nope. I was actually born 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire. Really? The pink-haired Kates asked. Issei nodded and took a seat on the couch of Kates. You don't mind, do you? She shook her head towards him sitting down. So, any questions or shall we get to the contract? Can we do both? I don't see why not. Issei said once more with his warm smile. You were born in the Roman Empire? So you are 2,000 years old? Well, for the first question, I was born in Japan actually. I was just taken into slavery at a young age. I don't even remember what my parents looked like. I have no memories of them. As for the second question, technically I can be considered 2,000 years old, but I was trapped in a tomb for well over 1,900 years and I didn't age. I was still human at the time until I was released, which then I became a devil. Issei said, sipping on some tea brought out by Murayama. Quite good, Issei stated. So you were a slave? Murayama asked. How did you get so good with a weapon? Well, during the Roman Empire, what were the biggest things about Rome that would have incorporated weapons? The army? Kates asked. Nah, Issei stated. It was then silent for about 30 seconds. You were a gladiator, Murayama said. Bingo, Issei said, point to Murayama. I was trained at a very young age to fight, kill and survive. I became undefeated and basically, it was how I am so good today with my gladius. You've killed people? Kates asked weakly. Yes. I've had to kill people to survive and I've killed people to save my friends and I've killed people because they had to die, Issei stated. Do you think of me as a bad person now? Issei asked, a bit sorrowful. Murayama shook her head. No. I can't consider you a bad person. I've seen how you are at school. You are kind to others and you don't act with selfishness from what I've seen. You care for others and you treated us with respect and kindness. You apologize when you make mistakes. I agree. We are just surprised as also what is being a devil like. At first I didn't care for it, and I even threatened the lives of my current friends, but eventually I started to enjoy my life. I really enjoy my life right now. I have a lot of people who care for me and that I care for. I have a lot of fun as a devil, though it's still difficult to accept that everything I once knew has changed. I never knew that people view nudity as bad. Where I came from, nudity was so widely accepted that it was everywhere. Women weren't afraid to get, and sex wasn't treated as something to be feared or hated. Issei said with a sigh. Slavery seems to have changed greatly but still remains in the world. Issei then looked up at the girls and chuckled. I've gotten off topic. To answer your question about what being a devil is like, I think it's great. You have enhanced durability, reflexes, speed, strengths. Basically everything is enhanced. The only thing is, devils do have weaknesses. The light. Not the sun but the power of light. It's generally what the church uses and our enemies. Murayama and Keitase listened closely, seeing as Issei was reminiscing about his past. After he finished his explanations, his attention once again disappeared from them and focused on something else, most likely his past. It was then the two girls looked at each other, nodded, and stood up. They removed the shirts they wore and revealed their lacy bras, Keitase wearing a black one while Murayama wore pink. Issei's attention was reverted back to them due to the changing colors in his peripheral vision, and he raised his right eyebrow as they dropped their bras. We're going to go take a swim in the pool. Join us, Murayama stated. Keitase nodded and they left the room. Issei stood up and followed them shortly, his eyes looking over their bodies for about 2 seconds before he returned his eyes towards their direction. Both women noticed his eyes and they shared a smile. They walked out of the house to the backyard of Keitase's house, only for Issei to spot a decent-sized pool that could hold about 10 people comfortably. They removed their pants and underwear in one go, though they both did it slow enough to see if they could arouse Issei, and while they noticed he didn't get hard, his attention did drip to their bottoms. With a smile, they walked into the pool and relaxed against one side. Join us, Keitase stated, and Issei shrugged a bit before he removed his shirt, and tossed it aside and removed his socks before removing his pair of shorts and underwear, dropping them aside before he made his ascent in the water. Both of the women were eyeing him with, enjoying the sight of his masculine body and his delectable third leg. Is this what you want as a contract? Issei asked curiously. He sounded more confused than anything. Part of it. We wanted some sword training, but that can wait. You enjoy time with us, right? Murayama asked, her hanging over the waterline. I sure do, Issei said with a warm smile, his eyes focusing on her own. They both noted he was pretty much the perfect gentleman when it counted, but was also a man that enjoyed the sight of a woman's body, which made these two ladies very happy. They both moved and took a seat on either side of Issei, with Keitase sitting to his left. He had gotten a good full frontal view of the curtains, and the window to a much better world. Murayama placed a hand on his chest and traced a very deep and old scar. How did you get this one? The scorpion, I take it? Your name is on everyone's tongue right now with the death of Kokabile at your hands. Quite an invigorating name. Any relation to the Roman scorpion? The same. Who might you be? Issei asked, stepping forward and leaning against the bridge's railing. Vala, the White Dragon Emperor. Also known as the Vanishing Dragon. I see. Good to meet you, Issei stated. The others behind him were getting antsy. As if a fight was going to break out. Your peerage seems to want to attack me. Well, considering who you are, who you work for, and the fact you just randomly appear is very suspicious, Issei stated. I can't really blame them, though they don't have the instinct we do. Guys, you can stand down. The man before you has no interest in fighting me, at least right now. He's correct, Vala said, walking away from them. I have much more important things to do, he said before disappearing. Issei frowned a bit as he stared at Vala, feeling the immense power coming from the boy. I have so much more to go. Issei walked with the girls into the school grounds but ended up stopping at the staircase. His focus was within his head, thinking about his options, and it was when Rias hugged him tightly that he woke up. Ah, Rias, Issei said in surprising, giving her a hug back. You seemed out of it, and you ignored me calling your name, so I thought hugging you was a good idea. Well, it got my attention. What's on your mind? The White Dragon Emperor? Partially, Rias. You trust me and my decisions, right? Rias nodded. For the most part. I'm still getting used to you as a king, but you are doing extremely well. Why? I need to leave for a week or two. Rias and the others were confused. Does this have something to do with meeting Vala? Aquino asked. Yeah. I'm not strong enough. I could tell between the two of us he's much stronger than Kokabile, or I. I must go. It may not be Vala, but someone stronger could come and screw with us, and we're not prepared. Rias frowned and looked at Issei with concern on her face before nodding. You are the king, so you can make that decision for yourself, but I appreciate you asking for my permission. You are all my friends and family. I can't leave without warning. Rias smiled and edged Issei on the cheek. Appreciated. Well, where do you plan on going? No idea. I will figure it out. All I know is, I am going to be training than ever. Will you be back by the summit? The summit? Oh right. Rias started. There is a meeting between the 3 factions in 10 days. You are requested to attend. I see, then that is 10 days I cannot waste. Please explain to Sona what is going on. There is no need, Sona said, walking down the steps. I heard it all. For one, I agree with you on this, and with the meeting coming, I have no doubt something is bound to go wrong. Call it a hunch, but the White Dragon Emperor will be an enemy. I agree, something about him makes me think he's going to be an enemy. His demeanor, and just the way his power pours from him. Sona nodded. However, you will have to make up for all of the days you miss of school and keep up with school on top of that. I will do so. Thank you all, Issei said before walking off into the old schoolhouse to teleport away in his magic circle. Issei appeared through his magic circle in a barren wasteland that reminded Issei of the destruction of a volcano. Ash and scorched rock everywhere. Oh, such a lovely, exquisite name, Issei said with a smile. Now tell me, you have such fear in your eyes and you were shaking while bent over the table. Why were you looking so scared? I wasn't scared. Just nervous. Don't lie to me, Issei stated with firm authority in his tone. I didn't really want to do it, but it was my job. Your job? Why take the job if you don't want to do it? Because my boss told me that if I don't get laid I will never get a boyfriend because I will always be a prude. He said that I should go work in a gentleman's club, she said, tears falling from her eyes, and Issei's sweat dropped a bit. Something told me this girl was a bit naive. Alright, well, take me to your boss so I can fix this for you, Issei said, standing up and offering out his arm to her, which she got dressed with magic and held onto his arm with both of hers. She was being walked out of the room when the server came by. Sir? You aren't supposed to take our workers away. I would appreciate it if you would just let us leave, Issei said with a big smile. This lovely young lady was forced into this line of work against her will, and I wouldn't want to have to get mean towards this lovely establishment, Issei said, his voice not even laced with any malice, but she could tell he meant it. Why yes, she said, walking away quickly to tell her boss what was going on. Issei chuckled and continued walking with the lovely lady on his arm when they neared the exit. It was then entering the establishment was a very old-looking man, but Issei could tell that he was a very powerful person. There was one more gentleman with the old man. This male had blonde hair to his shoulders and had a very powerful physique. Issei could tell he was also powerful, if not more powerful than the old man. That's the B-boss, Rosweiss said weakly, pointing to the old man. Issei smiled and patted her hand, which she let go of him for, and Issei walked up to the old man, and before either could expect it, Issei decked the old-looking man in the nose, though it was Issei who was hurt by it mostly. Issei could feel a bruise coming upon his middle 2 knuckles, but Issei stood there without a sign of being injured. The man next to the old man quickly moved towards Issei to strike him, but the old man raised a hand before stroking his beard. Rosweiss behind him had her eye wide as she now feared for Issei's life. You strike with such passion and force, and you know that I am much more powerful than you. Why would you do such a thing? The old man asked. Simple. You told this lovely young lady some very rude things and forced her to work here. She had just given herself up to me. So? The old man said. Issei struck out quickly once more, striking the old man in the jaw with the same hand, but no effect. You continue to strike me. This is becoming irritating. Irritating? The only irritating thing is you, old man. Old man? How dare you? I am the Viking god Odin. I am the king of Valhalla. Issei bent down to be face to face with Odin. Issei smiled. I don't care. This woman here looked at me with such fear in her eyes. She was scared. You made a woman scared, and I don't like that. Apologize. Now, the blonde-haired man smiled a bit and looked at Issei, nodding a bit. I like this boy Odin. He has no fear towards you or I, and he obviously is trying to protect your goddaughter here, the man said. Odin nodded. I can see that. Well, I do apologize, young devil, the man said, teleporting all 4 of them away in a flash before anyone could see them. Plus there was some magic put up that the humans never even noticed them. I didn't mean for her to go and work here. It was only just my frustration with her. Your frustration? You insult this beautiful young lady and tell her to go get laid? Tell her to go be a prostitute? That's a bit too much, don't you think? Perhaps. Odin said, turning to Roswise. I apologize greatly for insulting you and telling you to do such things. It's fine, Odin, she said, straightening out her battle outfit. Issei nodded and began to look around his surrounding, finding himself in a huge city that looked very royal. I can see you are curious, Odin said, smiling. This here is Valhalla, home to the Norse gods. Norse? Issei asked curiously. The other man smiled and nodded. Now I see. Odin, take a look at the man's chest, the man said. You are right, Thor. That is a scorpion stinger on his chest, Odin said, noting the stinger that was poking out of Issei's shirt. So you must be the infamous scorpion that is making waves through the magical world. I can now understand why you don't know who we are. Well, let me say this. We are just one pantheon of gods as there are others. You have the Egyptians, the Hindu, the Japanese, the Norse, and the Greeks. No Roman? Roman gods don't exist, Thor said. They were basically rehashes of the Greek gods. Sorry, kid, Thor said, shrugging. I see, Issei said with a frown. Well, I suppose that is it then. Time to try to figure out why I can't teleport away. Odin laughed a bit. It seems someone wanted you to come and meet me, Odin said. Someone put a spell that would take you to Norway where you have a big chance to meet me since I enjoy the human world so much. Not sure who, but, Odin said, poking Issei with his staff. The spell is now removed. You can teleport as you please. Thank you, Odin, Issei said, bowing his head in respect. I like you, kid. You are full of spunk and we need more people like you in this world. Tell you what, for saving my dear Roswise I'll do something for you. Anything you want, Odin stated, grinning lecherously as he looked at Roswise. Anything? Anything, Odin said with a nod. Train me, Issei said, bowing his head once more. Train you? Odin repeated with surprise, as he assumed Issei would take Roswise away from him, but this was new. Yes. I'm not strong enough to protect my family. I actually teleported away to do my own training, but seeing as you guys are all stronger than me, surely you training me would be better than my own training. Odin nodded. I am surprised at this request, but I will accept it. I will even do you better. I will train you as will Thor here and some others. How about it, boy? Can you take the training of the gods? Odin boomed, smacking his staff on the ground. Yes. I can take the training of the gods, Issei said, standing up straight. That's what I like to hear, Thor said with a cheer. I haven't trained anyone in a long while. This will be fun. Issei looked at the others. I only have 10 days, Odin nodded. The summit. Issei looked at him surprised. Anything you guys do we all know about, especially with all three of you together. If you only have 10 days, then 10 days you will have. I will even invite you back here afterwards for some more training only because I really like you. Now boy, run! Odin boomed, swinging his staff down at Issei, who jumped away thanks to Excalibur and ran off. Thor took his hammer and off he went to train Issei. Roswise turned to Odin, who smiled at her. Seems your new boyfriend there is about to become even stronger. You really think of me that much that you would train this devil? Of course. You are my goddaughter after all. Even if you are a nuisance at times, I do care for you. I want what is best for you, which is why I was wondering, what is it? What do you think about becoming a Devi? Thor charged into Issei, only to be grabbed by his left arm and shoulder and thrown over Issei's own shoulder, sending Thor into the ground. Thor was then picked up by the nape of his neck and his crotch, only to be tossed into a group of pallets, Thor's back smashing the pallets. Thor laughed and sat up from his spot. You are quite amazing. You aren't able to do much against a god in terms of your power, but when I lower myself down to your level with magic, you kick my ass in hand to hand. Tell me, where did you learn how to fight? Thor asked as he grabbed onto Issei's hand and was lifted up. Rome. I was a gladiator for most of my life. Really? That sounds exciting. I can't say I didn't enjoy the arena, just didn't like my master nor the death that came with the arena. I've had to kill friends, Thor nodded. I understand. I don't know if I could handle killing my brothers or my father, Thor said with a smile. Round 2? Sure. I can give you some pointers if you'd like. Awesome. This could only improve my power and skill, Thor said with happiness. Odin watched from his throne as the two men fought in hand to hand. Odin watched as Thor was once again thrown like a rag doll over Issei's shoulder, but this time before Issei could throw him across the room, Thor used his legs and wrapped Issei's own legs, making him fall onto Thor. Only for Thor to have an elbow pressed against his neck quickly. Issei once again won the bout. Odin turned to Rosweiss, who was watching Issei with much interest. Odin smiled softly at his goddaughter and patted her hand. You never gave me an answer. Would you like to become a devil? You mean join him? If he has the available spot, yes. Odin said with a nod. But wouldn't that mean I wouldn't be your bodyguard anymore? You need a lot of training before you can even become as good as the others. Odin said flatly, which depressed Rosweiss. But you have so much potential, you just need a good teacher. Something that I am not, but him? He has so much potential as well. His skill with anything put into his hands is amazing. He only needs to gain more power, and he could easily become a god. Odin said with a smile. And he's even a good teacher. Plus I can see the blush on your face and the crush in your eyes. You like the boy. I do not. Absurd. Rosweiss said with a blush, looking away from the Allfather. Who are you lying to? Me or yourself? Or are you just afraid to admit you finally found a boy you have a crush on? Okay, yes, I like him. He's strong, brave, handsome, and he's super kind. Odin nodded. Yes. He's a one-of-a-kind. Even I like a lot of his qualities. I could not be as bold or brave as he was. He punched me in the face because of what you went through, Odin said with a fond smile. I could happily leave you in his care. Though are you able to handle the fact he has a harem? He does? Rosweiss asked. Indeed. Devils are known for their harems, though Issei is very different from the devils I have encountered. Generally, devils are well known for their a lot of sex and gluttony, though we here in Valhalla are the same. Even I, before meeting my wife, had a harem at one point. Why did you give it up? I just did. Odin said with a shrug. Felt right with her, though even Thor here has multiple lovers at this time. Surely you know that. I do, so can you handle that? I can try. Plus, maybe I like being with a woman? I never tried it. Odin laughed heartily, and shook his head. You are a very strange woman, Rosweiss. You are eager to experience the world, and if it means being by his side, you're willing to do anything. Rosweiss blushed before looking at Odin. Why did you say he is different? He's still a virgin despite his immense age. A virgin? Are you sure? Yup. I am absolutely sure he hasn't had sex yet. So, what do you know about him? Do you know his story? Rosweiss shook her head and Odin nodded. Well, Issei is also known as the Scorpion. He was a slave for pretty much his entire life. He was a gladiator in Rome. I'm sure you know what that entails. Now, here is where it gets interesting. A devil befriended the master of Issei back in Rome, and basically, after Issei escaped, he was hunted down and imprisoned within a stone sarcophagus. Like Egypt? Exactly like Egypt. It was magically enhanced so he would never age, and so that he was awake for his imprisonment. Honestly, I'm very shocked he wasn't completely insane from his lockup. Though I think the magic used was weak anyway. Did he ever get revenge? I don't think so. I believe the devil is still alive, but I think the master is long dead. Odin said, which Rosweiss nodded in response. So that's his story, to put it simply. So he has a lot of self-control when it comes to women. That's why he didn't even get turned on by me, Rosweiss said, blushing madly from the images of what she did in front of Issei. Well, I will have to talk with him about you joining him. Can I do it instead? If that's what you wish. Just understand I love you just as I would my daughters. I want what is best, and this is something you want, and something that I think is best. Thank you? Rosweiss said with a blush. It was late at night when Thor finally called it quits with Issei. Thor had learned a lot about Issei during their fight, and Issei had taught him quite a bit about hand-to-hand combat. Thor ended up running off to the nearby pub in Valhalla to go see if there is a brawl to test his new skills in. In Valhalla, everyone was pretty much equal in strength, at least in certain buildings. Pubs were a place where everyone was equal, so no god or goddess could be a tyrant, so to speak. Issei, who was currently leaning against the ledge of Odin's palace, looking out to the wondrous city around them and the sky, when Odin approached him. I guess you didn't get much training done today, Odin said. Thor was supposed to train you, but it seemed you ended up training him. Odin said bitterly. It's quite alright. I enjoy doing such things. Well, tomorrow you and I shall do some training with your sacred gear and magic. I am also going to teach you how to wield that holy sword's abilities properly. Then, you and Thor can do some physical training to increase your base strength. Am I worthy to receive a god's blessing? A god's training? Why do you ask that? Because I've done so much wrong in this world. I've almost let my friends die in a battle because I was too careless. I almost got myself killed, which would have killed my friends as well. I've killed so many men who didn't deserve to die. Men who only wanted to survive another day. What make me so worthy? Odin hummed and leaned against the same ledge, looking out at the city. Beautiful, isn't it? Odin said with a smile before it got quiet for about a minute. You say you aren't worthy, but I find you worthy, Odin said, only to interrupt Issei with a raised hand. You seek strength to protect your friends, not to kill people. You seek strength in order to keep peace. You were offered my goddaughter's virginity and body in that pub. I wouldn't have minded you taking it, but the fact that you didn't and you protected her from such a fate of being a prostitute meant a lot to myself. You refused to satisfy any full cravings that all men have in order to protect someone you just met. You walked up to someone clearly stronger than you who could kill you with a flick of his finger, and punched him because of how rude he was to someone. You stood like a man in the face of two people who are much stronger than yourself because it was what was right. That right there is why you are worthy to receive such things. You are worthy of a lot, Odin said, his voice booming as he smacked his staff on the floor. I thank you, Issei said softly, before smiling at Odin. I have so much more to show you how worthy you are. You, my dear boy, I see as my own son right now. Is that proper? I am the All-Father. I can do what I please. Plus my own son Thor would back me up on this. Welcome to Valhalla, my dear boy. This is also your home now, Odin said with a big grin. Now come. A feast awaits you. You never had food until you've dined in a Valhallan feast. Issei walked beside Odin and they entered the large hall that was hosted within the palace of Odin, taking a seat at the large table next to Thor's seat, though he wasn't there at the time, and Rosweiss sat next to Issei. Odin coughed and smacked his goblet of Viking mead and ale. The table got silent, which was filled with about 50 people. I don't normally like to make toasts, but today, I make a toast towards my newest son, Issei Hyoudou. He isn't from our culture or our lands, but he's shown me that he is more than enough to be considered material worthy of Valhalla. I also want to congratulate my goddaughter Rosweiss on finding a wonderful man, and I approve of their marriage. To Issei Hyoudou and Rosweiss, Odin said, downing his alcohol, in which the others all cheered and downed their alcohol, though Issei and Rosweiss were not part of this. Issei stared at Rosweiss, and she just blushed. You and I have to talk, Issei said before downing his goblet of alcohol, which magically refilled itself before Issei began to dig into the food. Rosweiss blushed and nodded before digging into her own food. The feast lasted for well over 2 hours, everyone enjoying themselves. Singing, talking, drinking, and a bit of whoring as well. Women came to the table and happily threw themselves into the arms of the gods, which would include the goddesses who threw themselves. Valhalla feasts were quite the sight. Issei left the table and began to walk outside of the palace, only for Rosweiss to chase after him. Issei, wait. Please don't be mad. I'm not mad, Issei said with a confused look on his face. But you look mad. That's just how I look, Issei said before smiling. About in there, I had no idea Odin was going to do that. So what's going on? I want to be a devil with you, the Valkyrie blurted out. Please, okay, please. I really want to serve you and be wait, okay. Yup. If you are serious about joining me, I have no issue with it, Issei said with a shrug. Well, that's great. I shall do this before I leave to head back. Let you prepare yourself, Issei said with a smile before he began to fly into the air, heading towards the snowy mountains in the distance. Rosweiss quickly followed him, flying with magic before staring at Issei. What's with you going this way? Your bed is with me, Rosweiss said. Is it now? Issei asked, amused. I don't even get a bed to myself. Well, it was Odin's idea, she said with a deep blush. Well, you're welcome to join me in bed, but I plan on sleeping up there in the cold. Why? Simple. It's part of my training. The cold and the altitude make it so much better to train in. Well, that would make sense if it wasn't for the fact that the mountain really isn't that high, plus the magic in this world kind of negates the altitude sickness. Ah, really? Issei said with a pout, stopping in midair. Yes. That mountain is also the property of another, so it's not your call to go there, she said with a smile. Issei clenched his teeth and his fists as Excalibur and his body became in tune with each other, increasing the power of Excalibur as well as Issei. Rosweiss was worried for Issei as she could see he was in pain, but she was relieved as he saw him get to his legs, albeit shaking, before he stood tall. His eyes were still closed, but as his body finished shaking, his eyes shot open and his brown eyes now had flecks of gold in his iris and pupil. His body also began to arc off electricity made out of holy energy. A holy devil, Loki noted. An abomination, Odin nodded. Yes, this shouldn't be a thing, but I am glad it is, he said as the electricity began to be drawn back into Issei's body as he quickly got control. Even if you hate your master, he surely made you into the perfect war machine. Anything given to you as a weapon you learn quickly how to use it efficiently, Odin stated as Issei flexed his muscles a bit, looking over his body as he could see the golden energy that would flow through his veins. His veins faintly pulsed gold. I feel so powerful. As you should, Thor said. You merged with a very powerful weapon which only got stronger within you, and then you got stronger because of the weapon. Yet I'm not strong as you guys, am I? Not as strong as Odin or myself, no. Thor stated. We are top 10 beings, Thor stated. But you have reached top 40 for sure. Possibly top 30. Odin stated. I believe you have reached equal power to that Azazel fellow. That includes all of the power you have gained during your training here. Your skill alone would make you a threat to Thor, or either one strike from us, and you would be dead, he stated. Well, that's it. I know you want to brawl with your little brother here, Thor, but I believe it's time for Issei's go-away party. Odin said with a big smile. The biggest feast ever, Odin said with a roar, heading off towards the palace. Loki and Thor followed him, and lastly was Rosweiss and Issei. Issei and Rosweiss have gotten extremely close since his stay. After the first night that Issei was here, Rosweiss has made it her goal to be next to Issei as much as possible. She bathed with him every time, slept in the same bed, and ate her meals with him. She truly began to like him, if not love him, due to his kindness. Issei, on the other hand, wasn't simple. Issei doesn't know what love feels like, as for the most part, he didn't have the chance to grow up like normal people. He was a slave, a killer, a warrior for his entire life. But he does know that he wants Rosweiss with him in his life, just like he wants the others in his life. He would lay down his life for any of them without a second thought. Unknown to Issei, Rosweiss had planned to truly sleep with Issei, to become one with him. She had attempted beforehand with seduction attempts, but Issei was somewhat dense, or she just wasn't very good. You may go, Gondel stated. If this is your wish, then I will support it. If you hurt her, devil, I will kill you, and I shall accept such fate should I harm your daughter. Gondel nodded, and Issei pulled out the rest of his pawn pieces, walking over to Rosweiss, who laid down on the couch. Issei placed 2 pawn pieces over her heart, and closed his eyes, only for Rosweiss to in pleasure, as the devil powers became one with her, and 2 wings flew out of her back. Issei, Rosweiss said with tears in her eyes before embracing her. I will be by your side come rain or sunshine. I will be with you. You do know what that entails, don't you? You know what my past is, and what I am more than likely going to keep doing. I do. I will be by your side and help you, she said with a smile before a magic circle appeared nearby. It was Odin. All right, my son. It's time for you to go. You are running late, and I fear there is some chaos going on at the meeting, Odin stated. Quickly, he said, in which Rosweiss donned her battle armor, and Issei brought his 2 gladiuses to bear before they walked into Issei's own magic circle. So you are the one who told my granddaughter to work as a prostitute, spoke Gondel with a menacing tone. Odin gulped and slowly turned around, looking at the older woman who was known for her wrath. Pain was coming. Issei and Rosweiss arrived in the schoolyard, though far enough away that they weren't detected, but they could see and hear everything. This was too easy, spoke a male voice that Issei remembered from a long time ago. It was a voice that filled Issei with so much rage and hatred that his eyes began to cloud with the golden specks of Excalibur. Rosweiss noticed that change in Issei's demeanor and walked next to him. When they turned the corner, they saw that the school was heavily damaged with a huge chunk of wall missing. Michael, Serzex, and Grafia were holding up a magic bubble around Rias and the rest of Issei's peerage. There were some injuries, but Issei noted that they were not dead. Azazel was currently floating in the air, holding up his light spear towards a woman that Issei also recognized. Give it up, Azazel. You may have the white dragon on your side, but even he is tied up at the moment. Our forces are relentless. Azazel noticed something in his peripheral vision before he gave her a big grin. You know, you are right that my white dragon may be tied up, but he's not the only force on this field that can stop you. Oh please. No one here besides the dragon and the others can even stop me, and they are busy protecting their pathetic family. You are nothing and you are doomed, Kateria stated before sending a huge ball of black demonic energy. It was then massive amounts of blue magic circles formed a barrier between Azazel and Kateria, which also absorbed the demonic energy. The devil woman looked around and noticed that she was inside of a magical cage. Who goes there? T the S Scorpion, spoke Issei's old master, Julius. Him? He's alive? Who released him? That would be me, Azazel stated as Issei approached the 2 devils and the 4 bodyguards of Julius. Well, it was a group effort. He's been released, and he's been hoping to run into you too. Enjoy. Azazel snidely stated. Issei growled angrily and turned to Rosweiss. Keep the man still so I can dispose of him when I am done here. As you wish, Rosweiss said with a grin before flying off into the air. I've been hoping I would run into you one day. Vengeance will be mine, Issei said with a snarl, the grip on his swords tight. Oh please, Kateria stated, getting her smug attitude back. Kill him, she said, looking towards the four gladiator-looking warriors only for a humongous wave of white light to blast over them and annihilate them in one go. What the, die? Issei said, appearing right in front of her out of nowhere, punching her right in the face with his cestus-clad right hand. The cestus was the first boxing glove. It was basically a large amount of leather wrapped around the hand with spikes, nails, blades where the knuckles and would be on a fist. It wasn't a super popular weapon, and while it lacked the range of a sword, it was able to take a gladiator down with a single strike. Kateria slammed into the barrier before her wings got her back into the air. You are using holy? She screamed in fury, holding her face which had the indents of his weapon, as well as her face was sizzling. How is that possible? The sword you took from Julius was known as Excalibur. I was the original wielder, Issei roared, disappearing once again with brilliant speed in which he appeared right in front of Kateria, who couldn't even react as his fist rammed right into her gut, forcing her to puke up blood and bile. Issei didn't stop there and grabbed her by the back of the head and her crotch before he tossed her face first into the other side of the barrier. The barrier was shaped like a coliseum. You are just a lowly devil, she stated, forming many magic circles before launching several large balls of black energy. Issei had a large magical shield which took each hit like it was nothing before he disappeared once more and decked her in the face, forcing her back up against the barrier. Issei quickly pushed into her and began to into her chest, each strike breaking several ribs. Aya! Issei screamed in fury as he completely destroyed her ribs, grinding her bones into dust with each strike of his dual cestises. He then shoved his into her body, in which she screamed in pain, only for Issei to reach his second hand in. She was attempting to remove his hands from inside of her body, but he lifted her up by holding her spine before he snapped her spine, forcing her to be paralyzed before he ripped her body in two from above his head. Her blood rained all over his muscular body, giving him a sort of blood tattoo. Aya! Issei roared in fury as he thumbed in his chest in victory before he walked over towards Julius, who was caged up by Rosweiss' own magic. No, this can't be how it ends, Julius said in fear, beginning to struggle once more against Rosweiss' magic. You tortured countless people, treated them like they were toys, and you think that this isn't how it ends for you? You will die, Issei said with venom. Without me you wouldn't be where you are. You would be somewhere in Africa working on a farm. Probably dead in a ditch with no one to care. I at least cared for you. Even your great strength came from me. You were the cruelest of them all. Even other masters said you were the cruelest of them all. Issei snarled. I was forced to kill my own friends while training because they were too weak to you. You stomped on my scorpion pets because you didn't want me to get sentimental. You even promised to find my parents only to kill them. That's right, I found out that you had them killed to keep me indebted to you. You will pay, Issei said, rushing straight at Julius with extremely rage and pain in his eyes, only for a white ball of energy to strike Issei, who barely smacked it away with his left cestus, which was his sacred gear. Issei stood still as his head began to turn up towards Vala, who was flying in his balance breaker. I am afraid I cannot let you kill him, as he is still important to our needs, spoke the white dragon. I knew you were going to betray us from the very beginning, Issei said with a snarl. He did, and he warned us, which is why we allowed him to skip school and go train, Ria stated with a smirk. Just to beat you, Sona added. We knew all along, Akino said with a giggle. Oh really now? Vala said with a laugh. Yes, Issei said with a glare as his eyes now turned completely gold as the golden electricity began to spark off of his body. I knew all along you would betray us. Issei's body had golden electricity arcing off of his body as if he was a power conduit. Your attitude worried me when I met. I know people like you. Just like my master, you seek more and more power in order to enjoy yourself. My master only cared about himself, and the same goes for you. Impressive. Not even Azazel could figure out that I would betray him. You are fascinating, Vala said, charging at Issei after disappearing from sight, only to appear with a right hook. Issei simply raised his left arm and blocked his hook with his right hand, in which Vala's eyes under the mask were widened. Issei never had this sort of power to block the strength like this before. Weak, Issei stated. Vala swung his left hand in a jab only for Issei to block once more with his right before Issei slammed his left hand down and grabbed onto Vala's right wrist before smashing Issei's electric-clad forehead right into Vala's faceplate, which cracked. Issei then pulled his fist back and decked Vala in the faceplate, which was shattered. Vala sent out a powerful blast of energy towards Issei, but Issei ducked underneath the power which struck the school, which lost another large chunk of the wall. After the ducking underneath Vala, Issei leapt into the air and slammed his knee into Vala's chin, which staggered the dragon, allowing Issei to grab onto Vala's shoulder, bringing in Issei's right knee into Vala's armored gut, which penetrated the armor, doing damage behind it before Issei brought his elbow back into Vala's. With that, Issei did a roundhouse kick into Vala's armored chest, shattering the armor and sending Vala flying. Issei moved towards Vala, his presence demanding attention. "You are very fascinating," Vala stated, spitting out blood. 10 days ago, you weren't even a threat to me, and now you shattered my armor in seconds with your bare hands. So interesting," Vala said as he stood up and regained his armor before he flew into the sky in a bolt of white light, which began to arc over his body. His armor gave him much more power. Issei noticed this and was ready. When Vala disappeared from vision, only thing that resembled him was a white lightning bolt. Issei disappeared in a golden one before the two of them would begin to clash in the sky, thunder being heard each time, which formed powerful shockwaves that would crack the earth and destroy trees. "This is dangerous," Serafal stated. Serzex formed a larger barrier to encompass the school, and Azazel went back to assist with the barrier. "That kid had trained insanely to get this kind of power," Azazel said. "I wonder where he went." Rosweiss was currently nearby holding Julius hostage, but she had moved underneath the barrier. Rias walked over to her and stared at her. "Who are you?" Rias asked. "I am Issei's newest pawn," she stated. "I was one of Lord Odin's Valkyries, and I am also granddaughter to Gondel. How did he find you? Where did he find you?" "I cannot reveal this information at this time," Rosweiss stated as she turned her attention to the fight above, which was a stalemate. He was wielding Norse magic," Azazel stated. "It's not too hard to guess," he said with an evil grin which only got Rosweiss to glare at the fallen angel. "He met Odin," Serzex stated. "Odin trained him. I recognize that magic circle power," he said with a nod. "It seems Issei has some new and very powerful friends," he said with a grin. Michael frowned. "I hope that Issei isn't leaving the three great factions. That would be a blow too powerful to us." Up in the sky, Issei finally got the better of Vala and slammed Vala into the ground below before Issei roared in fury, and came down with his right leg outstretched to hit Vala, who dodged the attack. Issei's foot collided with the earth in an explosion of dust and lightning. Vala laughed happily, only to dodge by the skin of his teeth as a wave of golden lightning swept towards him, only to strike a few trees thanks to the dodge done by the dragon. The trees were ripped apart, and the roots were torn away by the strike. "This is utterly exciting. Finally an opponent worthy of me," Vala roared, throwing out a large ball of dragon energy which struck Issei right in the chest. But Issei had launched his own attack, which was a ball of golden energy which struck Vala in the chest as well. Issei was sent flying across the field into the barrier set up by the powers, while Vala roared in pain as his body was electrocuted. This is holy power," Vala said with a groan, before he shook his head and gained his bearings. "That would have killed you if you weren't wearing my armor," spoke Albion. "I see. Then I shall not let this advantage get away from me," Vala said as he launched at Issei, striking Issei in the jaw, who was getting up finally from hitting the barrier. "Divide," spoke the jewel which had Issei's power. However, during this, Issei had grabbed onto Vala and slammed him behind Issei, shoving him up against the barrier. Issei pushed in and began to hammer away at the armor, his fists forcing Vala up against the barrier, who attempted to block. "You dare threaten my family and friends because of your boredom? You think that this gives you the right to do as you please. You abuse your power in order to enjoy yourself, but you don't care what happens to others." Issei snarled out as he aimed his fist back and sent it in an uppercut right into Vala's chest, which completely shattered the armor. However, Vala's right hand revealed a large ball of dragon energy which was punched into Issei's chest, who was sent skidding across the field. "You think you can lecture me?" Vala said, appearing above Issei, delivering a right hook into Issei's face, who was set right back into the ground. Vala kicked Issei in the stomach, forcing him into the air, only for Vala to give a left jab into Issei's chest and send him flying into Issei's own barrier. "You who lives in the past? I never once threatened your friends," Vala stated, grabbing Issei by the before body, slamming him on the ground. "I only have a wish to fight the strong." You threaten them by joining forces with the Cow's brigade, Issei stated, tackling Vala, who was picked up and thrown onto Issei's shoulder, who charged with Vala before slamming him up against the barrier of the leaders. Issei followed up with a knee into Vala's face mask, which was shattered. Both of them had blood coming from their nose and mouth, dripping down their chests, though only Issei's chest could be seen with the blood. Oh please! If I wanted to kill your friends, I could have helped Kateria, Vala said as he uppercut Issei in the jaw before headbutting him in the chest and sending him stumbling backwards. I have no interest in world domination, I only follow them because of the chance of fighting strong opponents. This does not excuse anything, Issei said as he tackled Vala onto his back and placed his knees onto Vala's arms before Issei began to away at Vala's mask with his right hand, holding down his chest with his left. Vala's nose broke quickly and Issei continued to away, Vala no longer able to fight. You deserve to die, Issei snarled with venom. As he continued to into his face, blood poured more and more out of Vala's nose and mouth, only for Issei to now begin to choke Vala. Issei stared right down into Vala's face, his eyes full of nothing but rage. Vala weakly reached up and tried to pull Issei away from his, but Vala was too weak. Azazel came from behind and gently tried to move Issei off of Vala, only for Issei to remove his hands from Vala and punched Azazel in the gut. Stay out of it, he said with a snarl as he returned to choking Vala, only for a large stick to smack Issei in the face, sending him into the air before the stick came around and smacked Issei in the gut. Wow, you got defeated, Vala? Almost died, guess I get to save you this time, spoke a laughing male. Biko. So you are with the Cow's brigade, Azazel stated, brushing off his gut and shoulders. Yup. It just felt right, plus Vala here saved my life. Going to follow him for a long time, Biko said, Vala leaning against his shoulder, bleeding heavily. Issei roared and charged at them. His two gladiuses spawned, but Azazel grabbed onto him and held him back. Issei began to struggle, but Azazel had a good grasp with his arms behind his back. Issei watched as Vala and Biko disappeared. Azazel released Issei, who turned and placed his swords against Azazel's neck, his mouth twitching with blood appearing on his. You traitor! Issei said with anger, his eyes completely taken over by black and gold specks. Issei! Calm down! Akino stated, coming over and wrapping her around Issei, hugging him. He isn't the enemy, calm down. This isn't you. Calm, please calm down, Akino said, ing his neck and hugging him tightly. Issei removed his swords before he threw the swords towards Julius, who was kept still. Julius was struck in the gut, both swords embedded inside of him. Julius coughed up blood and looked at Issei. As she said, calm, I am very calm, Issei stated before he ripped both swords up and pretty much cleaved his body in two as the swords went from his gut, up his chest and through his head. The swords dispersed into mist before he walked into the school and headed for the gym. Where is he going? Surzex asked with a brow. Shower, Kaneko said, sensing Issei, who went to the showers in the gym. Surzex sighed and watched as all of their troops began to reappear through magic circles and the barriers set up by Issei and Rosweiss finally disappeared. This is a mess, but it's salvaged, Surzex commented. At least everyone is alive, Michael replied. Issei is going to feel horrible, Irina stated. Why? Seraphol asked. Because he wasn't here to protect us, Zenobia stated. Ah, Issei. Good to see you are alright, Surzex said with a warm smile. Yeah, Issei said, sitting on a chair that miraculously made it outside in one piece. So what now? I'm ready for bed here, so what is next for this meeting? What is this meeting exactly? We're making peace and I feel like we all here are in agreement, Azazel stated. We just wanted to get a word from you about what you want in this world before it's final. What I want? Issei stated. Sleep, Issei said with a small smile and a chuckle before he stood up. Well, to be put it frank, I just want to live with my family and friends that I have here in Ko in peace. I want them to be safe and sound. There is a catch: if anyone is caught hurting my friends or attempting to, they get no mercy from me. The price of this transgression is simple, Issei stated, summoning both his sacred gear balance breaker and Excalibur before he slammed them down hard into the broken table. Death. Issei took a seat back down. Since I know that you guys would have no interest in ing with my friends or family, you have no need to worry about me but them. Those who attack, they will all die, Azazel chuckled. I think we can all agree here he's no threat to our peace. If any, he's our trump card for it to succeed. Agreed, Surzex stated. I concur, Michael said. Michael turned to Issei and smiled. Well, Scorpion, we will not have peace between us. We thank you greatly up in heaven for your work. Before, Issei said before he let out a big yawn. You go, can I have a request? Issei asked, looking up at Michael from his chair. As long as it is within my power, anything. Well, it's a few things if that is all right. Issei said, looking him straight in the eye with seriousness. Anything. We all owe you our lives many times over. He said with a smile. One, do not call me Scorpion, please call me Issei. If we are to be comrades or even friends, then I wish to be called by my real name. Issei. That would be my pleasure, Issei. Michael said with a smile. 2. I wish to visit heaven in the near future, and see if Excalibur can get even stronger. I am fused with Excalibur, which is why you saw those holy electric powers of mine, but if I can get the sword stronger, then I become stronger. My final wish is also kind of a second parter to my second wish. I can come up with a way for you, a devil, to come to heaven. Michael said with a smile. What would be the final wish of yours, my dear boy? Can you please allow Irina and Zenobia to start praying again? I know it would mean so much to them. Zenobia and Irina gasped and both blushed from his kindness. Michael gasped a bit as well, though out of surprise, before turning to the 2 former exorcists. Well, ladies, is that the truth? Yes. It is the truth, even though we know God is dead. Praying gives me comfort. I even have my old Bible I carried around. I would love to be able to read it again, Irina said, tears in her eyes from the kindness Issei was showing. Once again, Issei was selfless. Zenobia nodded. It does for me as well. How adorable. A bond between believers of God who are devils in heaven. Seraphal said with a giggle. Michael, is this possible? Can you do it? Perhaps this can be a symbol of our peace. Serzex asked. Yes, I can, and I seriously doubt 2 devils who don't receive damage when they pray will be the end of the world. Issei moved forward to Michael and put his hand out. Michael took this hand and Issei held it. You are a very respectable man, like most people that I have met in this world. I appreciate your kindness in fulfilling my requests, and I will be here when you need me should the time arise. If you are in need of anything, you come to me and I shall fulfill it if it is in my power. Michael smiled and shook Issei's hand. I will keep that in mind. We are all in your debt, and forever will be for the things you have done and will do. You are strong, brave, kind, and selfless. You could have made requests for your own benefit, but you have made everything for others. For this, I will always be around to assist you should the time arise. Michael said before he began to teleport away. I shall return to heaven and get to work letting those 2 pray. Give it a few hours. Michael said with a smile. Thank you, Chief Michael. Irina and Zenobia said in unison. As for me, I think I shall stay around this town. I have begun to really like this place. Oh? Issei said, raising a brow. You should ask me first, as this is my territory. Not yet, it's not. Aquino said with a giggle. Ria still owns it, and by that, Serzex owns it. Aquino stated. Serzex shrugged. He can be of great help with your sacred gear or even training you if needed. Serzex said with a shrug. You will get along just fine, Serzex said, but Issei just sighed before he let out a loud yawn once again. Well, if that's the case, I'm going to bed, Issei said, waving his arm lazily before he teleported home, in which he stumbled into the circle, which meant he also stumbled right into his bed. Issei fell asleep almost immediately upon hitting his pillows. Issei woke up a little later than usual, and found himself alone in his bed. He stood up and walked over towards the bathroom, only to find out he was in a new bathroom he has never seen before. He was confused for a moment, but just started to draw a bath, as he was too tired and sore to do much thinking. The events from the night before with Vala and the others, with how quick he was to anger, and how quickly he was able to bring his swords to bear on Azazel. Am I really that much of a killer? Issei thought solemnly. Is this my only purpose? Is this all I can be? Issei said out loud to himself. Is what all you can be? Spoke a voice who entered the bathroom and knelt down next to the tub. Issei jumped slightly and turned his head, spotting the voice. It was Aquino. Oh, hello, Aquino, Issei said with a small smile, though she could see it was faked for her. Issei, Aquino said softly, laying her head on his arms, snuggling into him a bit. You're not upset about not being here in the beginning of the meeting, are you? I am upset about that, but that's not why I am down right now, Issei said quietly, beginning to stroke Aquino's dark black hair. Then why? What do you mean by is this all I can be? Aquino asked, looking up at the boy she had a major crush on. I'm a killer. A murderer. I was bred to be a killer. Everywhere I go, I bring death. Is this all I will ever be? Aquino sat up quickly and brought her hand up to smack his face, but he held her wrist, looking at her. Look at me. Everything I ever do is kill people. I was brought up to be a gladiator, which meant I killed people in the arena. I come back after being locked away, and once again I am killing people. This is all I am, isn't it? This is why I will never feel love. This is why I feel so lost. I am just meant to kill people. That's my purpose, isn't it? Issei cried, yelling at Akino. Issei was going mad, and Akino knew that he was suffering. Akino quickly climbed into the tub, ignoring the fact she was clothed, and she hugged Issei tightly, hugging his head to her bosom tightly. He screamed into her flesh, and she rocked him, letting him get the rage and pain out. Akino stroked his hair softly, feeling him shudder as he cried against her flesh, against her body. She just let him cry, let him feel something instead of hiding everything from the others. She let him mourn the losses he suffered, the lives he had to take. She let him mourn the fact that he never experienced a childhood, and all he's ever had to do in life was kill and survive. The girls were supposed to be the ones to give him a happy life as they promised, but they have not. They brought them into a world where he has to kill once more to survive. Oh, Issei, I'm so sorry, Akino said, hugging him tightly as she felt him move into slumber, his body going still as he fell back and went to sleep in the tub. She ate his forehead and climbed out of the tub, her clothes completely soaked. She undressed and placed the clothes on a rack to dry, before walking out of the bathroom completely. Upon exiting, Rias entered, and she immediately narrowed her eyes at Akino, who looked at her. I didn't sleep him with him, he had a mental breakdown, Akino said, looking down. What happened? Is he okay? Rias demanded, but Akino put her hands up. He's sleeping now, Akino said. Please be quiet. As for if he's okay, he's alive, but he's coming to a point where he's questioning himself. He is questioning his purpose of living. Why would he be doing that? Rias asked. He is questioning his purpose, as all he has ever done was kill people. Rias, we're supposed to be making his life better, but everything is the same. He's continually killing people just like he did when he was just a child. Rias looked down. We never thought of him, and what all of this was doing to him. No, we never did. We all thought he was happy because that's how he was on the outside, but he bottled everything up. Killing his old master and Kateria gave him a sense of peace in terms of his past. But now everything is being put into perspective. He almost killed Azazel as well. He is suffering. Then we have to make sure that even if this war happens, we can make it so that Issei is kept happy. We need to keep him happy and sane, Rias stated, looking at Akino. I have business with him, with Michael, as you know. I will take him on a date as well afterwards, Akino stated. If we are going to do what is right, neither of us can be jealous of the women in his life, Akino said, looking right at Rias as Akino was getting dressed. I know, Rias said quietly. I want him next, Rias said with a smile. You can have him when I am done with him, Akino said with a wink as she left Issei's bedroom with Rias, going to the kitchen. It was about 4 hours when Issei woke up. This time he found himself waking up in his bed despite knowing he fell asleep inside of the tub. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, looking around the room as he hunched over his lap before he stood up and walked to the dresser and the mirror, getting dressed in the next day's clothing. Issei saw his own reflection, and all he could see was a disgusting monster. He punched the mirror right where his face was, shattering the mirror before he roared in anger and slammed his hands on the dresser. When his hands collided, a piece of paper flew into the air and gently flew in front of him, which he caught. Issei, could you please meet me at the shrine in the town at the top of the mountain? I would really appreciate it. Akino, great. Guess I'm off to kill even more people. Will this nightmare ever end? Issei thought bitterly as he left the house as it was dawn. The sun was barely over the horizon. About 5 minutes later, Issei was halfway up the shrine. He was wearing white shorts, a white t-shirt, and a small red blazer that was open. He had his hands in the blazer's pocket. Ah, there you are, Issei. My apologies for the sudden invitation. It's fine. Who's my target? Issei asked bitterly. Akino narrowed her eyes a bit. No one. You aren't here to kill anyone. You're here because you are needed to be here, Akino said, her tone getting a bit cold towards him before she smiled. Now follow me, please. Good to see you again, Issei, Michael stated, appearing from the heavens in a golden light. Michael, is there something you need? Issei asked. No. I am here to give you something that you were supposed to get before the meeting, but it's better late than never, Michael said with a smile. Follow me into the shrine, would you? There's a powerful holy presence in the shrine, Issei noted as he followed Michael in. Indeed, Akino stated. Michael and I were working on something for you. A sword. He wanted to present the sword to you before the meeting as a sign of goodwill, but you were away. You are aware I don't need the sword, right? Issei asked, raising an eyebrow. Doesn't mean we can't give it to one of our peerage members. Since the sword is yours now, you can pass its ownership over, she said with a smile. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the xDoug-Dimmadome-x for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.